You jolt onto the rooftop and your knees buckle on wet tar. Rain needles your face. The sky is a bruised canvas stretched tight over London, and hanging in it like bloated sentinels are the barrage balloons, silvered gas bags tethered by cables swaying in the wind. Below you the Thames is a dull strip of pewter threading through the blackout, and somewhere down there people are shouting, metal clattering against metal, generators coughing into life. Your hands are shaking. You don't know how you got here, but the air smells wrong. Coal smoke and wet brick and something acrid that might be cordite. You're on a flat roof, maybe 4 stories up, surrounded by chimney stacks and the skeletal frames of radio aerials. To your left, a searchlight crew is wrestling a massive lamp into position, the barrel of it swinging through the drizzle. To your right, another crew does the same, their breath pluming white in the cold. A warden in a tin helmet swings a blackout hood over a skylight and barks at you. "Lights out, you daft sod!" You stumble back and nearly trip over a coil of cable. The warden doesn't wait for an answer, just moves on, his boots squelching in the puddles. Anti-aircraft guns thud in the distance, a bass rhythm that you feel in your sternum. The searchlight to your left suddenly ignites, a cone of white stabbing upward into the cloud deck. Then the one to your right joins it, and where the 2 beams cross the clouds seem to ripple, to glow with something that isn't quite light. For half a heartbeat you see it. Your city, your London, glass towers catching neon, construction cranes skeletal against a different sky, and then it snaps away, and there's only 1940 again, only the war. You press your palms against your temples. This isn't real. This can't be real. But the rain is cold, and the tar is gritty under your shoes, and when you breathe you taste ash. A door bangs open behind you, and a young man in coveralls stumbles out of a crew hut, arms full of charts. He's maybe 20, with oil smudges on his cheek and eyes that haven't slept in days. He sees you and frowns. You the runner from Sector? You open your mouth, close it, nod. "About bloody time," he mutters, and thrusts a rolled paper at you. "Eddie," he says, by way of introduction. "You seen the 4-lamp trick?" You unroll the paper. It's a star chart, hand-drawn in pencil and chalk, the Big Dipper sketched with careful angles and bearings noted in the margins. Someone's written elevation 40 degrees azimuth, 310 degrees, next to 1 star, and hold pattern 10 sec minimum at the bottom. "What is this?" you ask, and your voice sounds strange to your own ears. Too modern, too flat. Eddie glances over his shoulder at the searchlights. "Old wives' tale, innit? Some of the lads reckon if you get 4 beams to line up just so, like stars, yeah? It calms the clouds. Keeps the fog from rolling in too thick. Load of bollocks, probably. But we tried it last week and the sky cleared for 20 minutes. Long enough to spot 2 Heinkels before they could drop their loads." You stare at the chart. The Big Dipper. Your constellation. The one you can see from your flat on clear nights. The one you used to trace with your finger as a kid. 4 stars. Dubhe, Merak, Fector, Megrez. 4 searchlights. The rule clicks into place in your mind like a key turning. You don't know how you know, but you do. Coordinate 4 searchlights to place their beam tips at the stars of your constellation. Hold the pattern 10 seconds. The crossed cones will carve a door of light. "I need to talk to your sergeant," you say. Eddie blinks. "He's on the next roof over." "Why?" "Now." The sergeant is a brick of a man with a moustache like a steel brush and eyes that have seen too much. He's barking orders into a field phone when you climb across the plank bridge connecting the roofs, the wood flexing under your weight, wind trying to claw you off into the street 4 stories below. You grab the railing, just a rope strung between posts, and haul yourself onto his roof. "Who the hell are you?" he demands, phone still clamped to his ear. You straighten, force your voice crisp and authoritative. "Orders from Sector. We're coordinating a pattern, roofs A, B, C and this one. 4 beams, specific bearings. It's for spotting." The sergeant's eyes narrow. "I didn't get any." "You're getting them now," you snap, and something in your tone, or maybe the rain plastering your hair to your skull making you look half drowned and desperate, makes him hesitate. "What bearings?" he asks finally. You pull out the star chart, your hands steadier now. "I'll position each crew. We need field phones linking all 4 roofs." He studies you for a long moment, then nods curtly. "You've got 15 minutes. Then we're back to standard sweep patterns. Jerry could be overhead any second." You take the field phone and start calling the other roofs. 1 crew is already in position. That's Eddie's team. 2 more are nearby, their lamps angled wrong but close enough. You translate the dipper's coordinates into azimuths and elevations, numbers the crews can actually use. Dubhe, azimuth 315, elevation 42 degrees. Merak, azimuth 320, elevation 38 degrees. Vector, azimuth 310 degrees, elevation 35 degrees. Megrez, azimuth 305, elevation 40 degrees. Your hands are cramping from gripping the phone too hard. The rain is heavier now, drumming on the tar, and the generators are howling as the crews power up their lamps. You scramble between roofs, using the plank bridges and one terrifying ladder climb, chalking big numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 on the parapets so each crew can see their role at a glance. On my mark, you shout into the phone, your voice tinny through the speaker. Beam 1, up. The first searchlight ignites, a pillar of white stabbing upward. You've positioned it to be Duba, the pointer star. Beam 2, up. Merak joins it, and where the two cones intersect, the cloud glows with that impossible shimmer again. You catch a flash of your city, a bus, red and modern, sliding across the ghost image before it fades. Beam 3, up, Vector. But the wind gusts and the beam wobbles, the tips sliding 3 degrees off target. You can see the operator fighting the handwheel, the lamp's massive barrel swinging like a siege weapon. Hold it, you shout. Clamp down. Beam 4, up. Megrez rises, but it's too far left, the angle wrong. The 4 beams form a rough quadrilateral instead of the dipper's clean lines. Where they cross, the glow flickers. Your river, the Thames but not the Thames, a lit tower that won't be built for 80 years. And then flak bursts shred the sky to the east and the pattern collapses. The sergeant's voice crackles over the phone. What the hell was that? We're trying again, you say. No, you're not. We've got a Heinkel inbound bearing... 2 minutes, you cut him off. Give me 2 minutes. You hang up before he can argue. Eddie appears at your elbow, rain streaming off his helmet. Generator 3 just cut out, he says. We're on backup, but it's flickering. Of course it is. You follow him down a narrow gap between chimney stacks to where a diesel generator is coughing black smoke. The cable running from it to the nearest searchlight is half submerged in a puddle. You and Eddie grab the cable. It's heavy, rubber-coated, slick with rain, and haul it onto a wooden pallet, rerouting it away from the water. Your palms burn. Eddie's knuckles are raw and bleeding. Should hold now, he pants. The warden appears again, his face red. You're silhouetting the whole bloody block. Angle those beams up or I'm shutting you down. They're already up, you say, but you check the elevations anyway, calling adjustments to each crew. 4 degrees lower to catch the fog deck that's rolling in from the east. No ground glare, no direct sight lines to the street. The warden grumbles but doesn't follow through on his threat. You chalk the revised numbers on a scrap of plywood and prop it where all 4 roofs can see it. Star 1, elevation 3080. Star 2, elevation 3040. Star 3, elevation 31. Star 4, elevation 3060. The constellation will sit lower in the sky now, cradled in the fog. You grab the field phone again. Your hands won't stop shaking. Listen up, you say, and your voice is steadier than you feel. On my mark, beams up to position, then tiny trims only. Nothing big, just nudges. When I start counting, you hold. Don't move a muscle. I'll count 1 to 10. If we break before 10, we start over. Silence on the line. Then Eddie's voice. Right. We're ready. You close your eyes and sync your breathing with the generator's chuff, chuff, chuff. The rhythm steadies you. You open your eyes. Mark. Beam 1 rises. Beam 2 rises. They're climbing slower this time. The operator's easing the wheels instead of cranking them. Where the cones intersect, the glow starts immediately. A pale wash like moonlight through gauze. Beam 3 rises, but overshoots. Back 2 degrees, you bark into the phone. The beam drops jerky, then smooths out. Beam 4 rises, slides left. Ease right 1 degree there. The pattern forms. The Big Dipper traced in light across a wartime sky, each beam tip touching a star only you can see. The glow where they meet is thickening, turning from gauze to milk to something denser. 1, you say into the phone. Your voice is a metronome. The glow brightens. In it you see the Thames bend, exactly where it should be, but lined with modern buildings, glass and steel, lights winking. 2, the ghost river aligns with the real river below. A high rise from your time flares in the glow like a memory trying to surface. 3, a gust hits. Beam 3 jitters. You hear the operator cursing, the wheel squeaking. Clamp it, you shout. Tiny trims only. 4, The glow is a plane now, vertical, like a sheet of light stood on its edge. You can see through it. Your city, your London, rain slicking the pavement, a taxi idling at a corner. 5. Flak bursts to the north. The sergeant is yelling something you can't make out. A bomber's shadow drifts across the moon, low and heavy. Beams to target, the sergeant orders. Rake the sky. Stay on pattern, you shout back. Your voice cracks. Stay on it. Eddie's voice, thin with fear. There's a Heinkel right above us. 6, you say. You don't look up. The glow thickens further. It's not just light anymore. It has weight, substance. The edges are sharp, rectangular, a doorway cut into the air. 7, a whistle, falling debris. Something metallic crashes onto the next roof over and you hear men shouting. Your hat lifts in the wind, grit stinging your cheek. Eddie is staring at you, waiting for the order to break pattern, to run. You nod at him. Keep counting. 8. The plane of light is solid now. Through it you see your street, your block, the corner shop with its LED sign, and the bus stop with its digital display. The rooftop sounds are fading. Generators, wind, shouts. Replaced by a high, glassy ring like a tuning fork struck in a cathedral. 9. The beams cross hard, locking the pattern. The doorway's open, a bright rectangle suspended in rain, and it's not just an image anymore, it's a threshold. You can feel the pull of it, the modern air beyond smelling like hot concrete and exhaust instead of coal smoke. 10. You step forward. The rooftop tilts, and the rain turns to the hiss of tyres on wet asphalt. You're standing on a sidewalk, your sidewalk, the one outside your flat. The air is warm. Street lamps glow amber along the river. Your pocket buzzes and you pull out your phone. The screen is locked on night mode, amber and dim, and the time reads 11:47 p.m, but the date is today. You're present. You turn. Behind you the doorway is still there, a seam of light hanging in the air above a bus shelter. Through it, you see the rooftop, Eddie staring at the space where you were, his mouth open. The light flickers, fades. The doorway shrinks to a silver line and vanishes. You stand there in the rain, heart hammering, and reach for the light switch on the nearest lamppost. It doesn't respond. The lamp is already dimmed, locked into some low lumen setting you don't remember. You check your phone again, the brightness is locked, the night mode setting greyed out, unchangeable. A siren rises in the distance. Not modern, not quite. It sounds like an all clear, that long rising note from the Blitz, but it's faint, an echo in the wrong decade. You know somehow, the way you knew the rule before, to go back, you need to wait for the all clear and uncross the beams in reverse order of the constellation, while the siren matches your count. The door works both ways, but only on its own terms. The siren crests. You close your eyes, and the light blooms behind you, spilling across the pavement. You step backward through it, into cold and smoke and the thud of distant guns. You're on the rooftop again. Eddie yelps and nearly drops the field phone. How did you uncross them, you gasp. Reverse order, beam 4 down, then 3, then 2, then 1. The beams drop one by one and the doorway thins to a seam and winks out. Dawn is a faint blue line in the east. The all-clear siren is dying away. The real one, the 1940 one. You test the pattern again 2 nights later. A shorter lock, 7 seconds instead of 10 to save the men's eyes from the glare. You step through, return to your present, and notice the changes immediately. The street lamps on your block click off at 10 p.m. now, not midnight. The cinema 2 streets over has a dead bulb in its neon sign. The O in Apollo refuses to light no matter how many times they replace it. Your flat's hallway is darker, the motion sensor lights defaulting to a low amber glow that barely reaches the corners. Your laptop screen won't go above 70% brightness. Each successful lock blackout's part of modern life. Your city is quietly adopting wartime habits, dimming itself one light at a time. You go back a 3rd time because there's a raid coming, a big one, and the sergeant tells you the pattern, your pattern, reduces stray glare, seems to calm the clouds, buys seconds for the spotters to track the bombers before they can reach the river docks. Those seconds matter. Those seconds mean crews don't burn, children don't die in their beds, ambulances make it through the rubble-choked streets. But each lock you achieve dims your own era a little more. You come back to find every traffic light on your commute stuck in low-power mode. The crosswalk signals dim enough that you have to squint to see them. The grocery store's fluorescents are half strength. Your office building's corridors are cave dark after 7 p.m. How many locks can you live with? How much light are you willing to trade? You stand on the 1940 rooftop with rain hammering the tar and Eddie looking at you with something like hope in his eyes. The field phone crackles. Raid confirmed. 30 Heinkels inbound. ETA 4 minutes. One more lock, you tell him. One more and I'm done. He nods. For the lads on the river? For the lads on the river. You call the pattern. The beams rise. The count begins. You hold it for the full 10 seconds, watching the door of light open and the ghost city shimmer beyond it. The bombers drone overhead, but the pattern holds, the reduced glare giving the gun crews precious seconds to track and fire. You hear the guns roar, see tracer rounds stitching the sky, and one of the Heinkels banks hard and peels away trailing smoke. 10, you say, and step through. Your present is darker. The river walk where you used to jog at night is unlit past 9 p.m. now. The bridge lamps follow a new schedule. Tighter angles, fewer pools of light, earlier cut-offs. Neon signs all over the city have dead letters. Restaurant signs missing vowels. Theatre marquees with gaps like missing teeth. Your phone is a permanent amber glow that strains your eyes, but you can't change it, can't override it. But the news alert that pings, soft, amber, barely visible, says a river emergency drill yesterday ran faster than ever before. Emergency crews navigated the dark corridors of a flooded building in record time, their eyes already adapted, their protocols mysteriously improved for low-light conditions. No casualties, perfect execution. You stand by your window as rain threads the glass. The city outside is dimmer than it was a week ago, but somehow it feels safer, more deliberate, like it's learned something from the blackout years. Somewhere in the distance a siren sounds and its overtones are older, layered with echoes from 80 years back. You cup your hands and look up. The clouds are low and heavy, and you know that if you wanted to, if you found 4 searchlights, or even 4 strong flashlights, and traced the constellation just right, you could open the door again. You could go back and help Eddie and his crew through another raid, trade another slice of brightness for another night of lives saved. But you don't. You let the clouds pass, let the sky stay yours, let the city keep what light it has left. The rain taps the window like Morse code. You think of Eddie, of the sergeant with his steel brush moustache, of the men cranking the hand wheels on those massive lamps with their palms raw and bleeding. You think of the Thames below them, dull pewter in the blackout, and the Thames below you now, dimmer than it was but still flowing, still here. You turn away from the window, your flat is dark, the hallway darker, the street darkest of all. But when you close your eyes you can still see the 4 beams crossing, the constellation traced in light, the door opening like a promise or a warning. The sky waits, the clouds drift. And somewhere between then and now, in the space where searchlights cross and time folds like paper, the city learns to live with less, light and more shadow, trading brightness for safety one careful lock at a time. You sleep that night with the sound of rain on tar echoing in your dreams, and when you wake the world is a little darker but somehow more your own. But 3 days later the phone calls start. The first one comes at dawn, your phone vibrating on the nightstand, the screen's amber glow barely visible in the pre-dawn murk. You fumble for it, eyes gritty with sleep, unknown number. Hello? Is this the person who's been operating the searchlight pattern? The voice is clipped, professional, British, but modern. The 4-beam configuration. You sit up too fast. Your head spins. Who is this? My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I'm with the Royal Observatory. We've been tracking anomalous light signatures over London for the past week. Specifically, 4-point intersections that create localised temporal distortions in the cloud layer. The pattern matches historical records from 1940, but the effects are appearing now, in our present. I need to know if you're responsible. Your mouth is dry. You don't answer. I'm not with the government, she continues, softer now. I'm a researcher. I study atmospheric phenomena and chronometric anomalies. What you're doing, whatever you're doing, it's leaving traces, measurable ones, and I think I can help you understand what's happening to the city. You meet her at a cafe near the observatory that afternoon. She's younger than you expected, maybe 35, with black hair pulled back severely and glasses that keep sliding down her nose. She has a laptop and 3 notebooks spread across the table before you even sit down. Show me your hands, she says without preamble. You extend them. Your palms are still raw in places, calloused in others. Marks from hauling cables, from gripping the field phone too hard, from steadying yourself on rain-slick parapets. She nods, satisfied. You've been there physically, not just observing, participating. That explains the severity of the blackout effect. The what? She turns her laptop toward you. On the screen is a map of London overlaid with heat signatures, zones of colour ranging from pale yellow to deep purple. Your neighbourhood is dark purple, almost black. Energy redistribution, she says. Every time you open a stable temporal doorway and pass through it, you're not just moving between time periods, you're creating a conservation exchange. Light energy from our present is being pulled backward to sustain the pattern in 1940. The more crossings you make, the more present-day illumination gets locked into a lower state. You stare at the map. The dark zones spread like ink stains from the points where you know you've opened the door. Your block, the Riverwalk, the streets you pass through returning from the rooftop. How much have I taken, you ask quietly. 7.3% of the city's total light output is now operating at reduced capacity. Street lamps, building, lights, personal devices, all dimmed or locked into low power modes. It's not just aesthetic. Traffic accidents are up 11% in the affected zones. 2 people have been mugged in areas that used to be well lit. A cyclist hit a curb she couldn't see and broke her collarbone. Your stomach clenches. You think of the emergency drill, the lives saved, and now this. The hidden cost coming due in your own time. Can it be reversed, you ask? Dr. Chen closes the laptop. I don't know. Theoretically, if you stopped making crossings, the energy drain should stabilise. But I don't think it would reverse on its own. The light that's been pulled back to 1940, it's being used there. Consumed. You can't get it back any more than you can unburn a candle. So what do I do? She meets your eyes. That depends. Why are you doing this? What's worth 7% of a city's light? You tell her. About Eddie and the crews, about the raid you helped them spot, about the seconds that saved lives on the river docks, about standing on a rooftop in 1940 with rain hammering down and knowing that your presence, your pattern, made a difference. She listens without interrupting. When you finish, she's quiet for a long moment. There's something else, she says finally. The temporal mechanics of what you're doing. They're not stable. Each crossing weakens the barrier between the time periods. Right now you need 4 searchlights and a precise pattern to open the door. But if you keep going, if you make enough crossings, the barrier will thin to the point where the door might open spontaneously. Anywhere. Any time. You could be walking down the street and suddenly step through into 1940 without meaning to. Or worse. Worse. Other people might fall through. The door might stay open. 2 time periods trying to occupy the same space, the same air, the same rain. She shakes her head. I don't know what would happen. Nobody does. But I don't think it would be good. You walk home through streets that are noticeably dimmer than they were a month ago. The sun is setting and the lamps are coming on, or trying to, some flicker and fail. Others glow with that sickly amber that's become the new normal in your neighbourhood. You pass a corner where 2 teenagers are squinting at their phones, the screens barely visible in the gloom, complaining about the brightness settings being locked. Your flat feels like a cave. You try turning on every light, but the cumulative effect is barely enough to read by. You stand at your window and look out at the city. Somewhere out there, 85 years in the past, Eddie and his crew are manning their searchlight, ready to trace patterns in the sky at a moment's notice. Somewhere out there, the Blitz is still happening, bombs still falling, people still dying. And somewhere in between, a door waits to be opened. You don't go back for 2 weeks. You ignore the pull, the knowledge of how to trace the constellation, the memory of Eddie's hopeful eyes. You go to work, come home, live your life in a city that's slowly learning to function with less light. The news reports it as an energy-saving initiative, a grid optimization program, a response to climate concerns. Nobody knows the real reason except you and Dr. Chen. But then Eddie finds you. You're standing at the bus stop near your flat, waiting in the amber gloom, when you hear it. The crackle of a field phone, tinny and impossible. You turn and he's there, translucent, flickering like a projection, standing in the rain that isn't falling in your present but is falling in his. Need you back, he says. His voice sounds like it's coming through water. Big raid tonight. Biggest yet. The pattern. It works. It saves lives. The sergeant's asking for you. I can't, you say. A woman at the bus stop glances at you, then looks away quickly, pretending she didn't hear you talking to empty air. Every time I cross, it makes things worse here. Worse how? Eddie's image flickers. Darker? We live in the dark every night. We black out every window, every street. We live like moles, and we die like rats in the rubble when we get it wrong. Your dark has street lamps. Ours has bombs. People are getting hurt here because of the blackout I caused. People are dying here because you're not helping. The field phone crackles and cuts out. Eddie's gone. The bus pulls up, doors hissing open, and you stand there frozen as it drives away without you. That night you dream of searchlights. You dream of standing on the rooftop while the beams cross and recross, tracing patterns that aren't quite the Dipper, doors opening and closing like mouths trying to speak. You dream of falling through one and landing not in 1940 but somewhere else entirely, 1914, trenches and gas and mud, or 1666, the city burning, flames instead of searchlights reaching for the sky. You wake gasping, your sheets soaked with sweat despite the cold. Dr. Chen calls the next morning. The barrier's thinning faster than I predicted, she says without preamble. I'm picking up microfissures all over the affected zones, small temporal leaks. Nothing a person could pass through yet, but did you go back? Did you open the door again? No. Then someone else is trying to, or something from 1940 is pushing through from the other side. You meet her at the observatory. She shows you the data, spikes in chronometric readings, localized drops in air pressure, reports from your neighborhood of people hearing air raid sirens that aren't real, seeing flashes in the sky that don't correspond to any aircraft or lightning. It's Eddie, you say, one of the men from the searchlight crew. He came through, not physically, but like a projection. He asked me to come back. Dr. Chen goes very still. If they're reaching through from their side, if they're trying to reopen the door without you, it'll tear, you finish. The barrier. It'll tear and we'll both fall through. Won't we? 1940 and now, all mixed together. She nods slowly. I think so, and I don't think either time period would survive it intact. You have a choice to make, and you hate both options. Go back and risk destabilizing the barrier further, dimming the city more, maybe even causing the catastrophic collapse Dr. Chen is predicting. Or refuse and let Eddie and his crew struggle through the raid without the pattern, without the small advantage your constellation gives them, and possibly let the barrier tear anyway as they desperately try to pull you back. You make your decision standing at your window as dusk falls, and the inadequate lamps flicker on across the city. You think about the emergency crews who navigated the dark building so efficiently, about the skills your city is relearning from its own past. You think about Eddie holding that field phone with raw, bleeding hands, counting on you. You call Dr. Chen. If I go back one more time, you say, can you monitor it? Track the energy exchange, the barrier stress, all of it? Yes. Why? Because I'm going to close the door. Permanently. Seal it so it can't be opened again. Not by me, not by Eddie, not by anyone. I don't know if that's possible. Neither do I, but I have to try. She's silent for a long moment. Then, I'll meet you there. Where do you need to be? You tell her the rooftop. Your rooftop. The one in your present that corresponds to Eddie's position in 1940. She arrives with equipment, sensors, meters, devices you don't recognize. You stand together in the amber gloom as rain begins to fall, and you look up at the clouds. How do you open it from this side, she asks. You pull out your phone. You've already called in favours, made arrangements. 4 friends positioned on 4 nearby roofs, each with a high-powered spotlight borrowed or rented or stolen. You've given them the coordinates, the angles, the timing. The same way, you say. 4 lights, the constellation, 10 seconds. And then? Then I go through and I uncross them in a pattern that will collapse the door inward instead of just closing it. Axing eel, not a pause. At least that's the theory. Dr. Chen checks her equipment. I'll monitor from here. If the barrier starts to catastrophically fail, you'll know before I do, you finish. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. You lift your phone and send the message. Now. 4 beams rise into the rain-heavy sky, LED spotlights tracing the stars of the Dipper. They're not as powerful as the 1940 searchlights, but they're enough. Where they cross, the glow begins, that familiar milk-white shimmer that means the door is forming. You count. 1, 2, 3. The glow thickens. 4, 5, 6. It becomes a plane, a threshold. 7, 8, 9. Through it you see Eddie's rooftop, see him standing there waiting, his face breaking into a grin of relief. 10, you say, and you step through one final time into the rain and smoke and distant thunder of guns, ready to close the door behind you forever. The next story is about to begin. Please relax and enjoy. Cold bites through wool. Frost silvers the grass beneath your feet, each blade rigid and glittering under starlight so thick it feels like you could reach up and draw your fingers through it like water. The trilithons loom like dark teeth against the sky, massive sarsen blocks standing in pairs with lintels balanced impossibly across their tops. And though you've studied the photographs, read the theories, memorized the dimensions, nothing prepared you for the weight of them, the way they seem to lean inward as if listening. A steady wind threads between the stones, low and insistent, and as it passes through the circle, something happens. A hum shivers through the lintels, barely audible but felt in your sternum, in the small bones of your inner ear. Your hand grips the antler mallet wrapped in hide, the bone worn smooth by hands you'll never know, and in your head the 5-tone chant you practiced in your apartment loops endlessly. The sequence you spent 3 months learning from a fragment of notation that shouldn't have existed, found pressed between the pages of a book on archaeoacoustics that appeared on your doorstep with no return address. You pace the sarsen ring, boots crunching through frost, counting lintels in the order marked on the scrap of birch bark that came with the mallet, the sequence that supposedly aligns with the midwinter sunrise line, though the sun won't breach the horizon for hours yet. Chalk notches mark certain stones, pale scratches that catch what little light reaches this place, and you understand now that these aren't random damage, or the work of tourists with their small vandalisms. They're instructions, a score written in stone. You approach the first marked lintel, raise the mallet, and test a gentle tap against the massive beam of sarsen. The stone answers with a round, bell-like tone, a clear A that seems to hang in the cold air, resonating in your ribs, in your jaw, in the hollow spaces of your skull. You wait for it to fade, counting seconds, listening to how the wind carries it, bends it, gives it texture. Different lintels carry different fundamentals you discover as you move clockwise, tapping each in turn. This one a deep D that makes your teeth ache, that one a bright E that seems to lift toward the stars. The ring is a tuned instrument, deliberately, impossibly tuned, each massive stone chosen or shaped or positioned to produce a specific tone when struck just right. You begin the 5-tone sequence marked in your notes. Tap the first lintel and wait, listening for the wind-borne overtone that rises from the fundamental like smoke. The wind obliges, pulling harmonics from the stone, notes within notes, a shimmering column of sound that seems to have mass. Move to the next lintel, counting steps, positioning yourself exactly as instructed, and tap again, letting the previous note and this new one interlace, weaving together in the space between the stones. The wind changes direction slightly and the overtones shift, finding new relationships, and you feel it in your chest, that moment when 2 tones lock into consonance, when they stop fighting and start singing. 3rd tone, 4th, 5th, each added with careful timing, each allowed to bloom fully before you move on, and when all 5 notes finally hang in the air together, the space inside the circle tightens like a drum skin pulled taut, like the air itself has become a string waiting to be plucked. Miss the timing or the placement and the tones wobble apart, beating against each other in ugly interference patterns, creating a discord that makes your vision swim and your stomach lurch. You've made that mistake twice already tonight, and both times the sensation was so viscerally wrong that you had to step outside the circle and wait for the nausea to pass. You adjust your technique, shift your stance to change the angle of impact, tap softer to lift the higher harmonics and suppress the fundamental, press the hide-wrapped head of the mallet against the stone immediately after striking to dull a harsh partial that's muddying the chord. Wind drops to nothing and you wait, frozen in place, because without the wind to carry and blend the tones the sequence won't work. You learned this the hard way on your first attempt, when you tried to force it through a calm moment, and succeeded only in creating 5 separate notes that died in isolation. Wind rises again, threading through the stones with a sigh, and you ride it, timing your taps to the gusts, using the air itself as part of the instrument. Thin ice forms in hoof prints at your feet, the the marks of cattle or deer that passed through here before the stones were raised, fossils in mud now frozen solid, and you wonder what they would make of this, those animals that once grazed where gods would later be invoked. A distant drum beats steady rhythm from somewhere beyond the ditch and earthwork that surround the stone circle, or perhaps it's just your pulse pounding in your ears, but either way it steadies your tempo, gives you something to anchor to as the wind plays tricks with your sense of time. On your third circuit, the chord locks for a breath, for a single perfect moment, and everything changes. The sky seems nearer, as if the vault of heaven has descended to press against the top of the stone circle, and the stars sharpen, their light wiping clean some film you didn't know obscured them, each point of light now a needle prick of impossible clarity. In that locked second, the plain beyond the stones flickers with an impossible overlay. You see, or think you see, a scatter of red lights moving along a distant road that won't be built for 5,000 years, tail lights on cars that exist in a time you're not currently occupying, and the dissonance between what you're seeing and where you are is so profound that you gasp, and the chord breaks, the tones sliding apart like oil on water. But you know you're close now, close to the door of sound, the threshold the instructions hinted at, the reason someone sent you a Neolithic mallet and directions for playing a stone circle like a musical instrument on the winter solstice. Complications multiply. Your fingers have gone numb despite the wool wrapped around them, the cold of the antler mallet seeping through every layer, drawing heat from your core. The mallet's crown splinters at one tine, a sharp crack that sounds obscenely loud in the spaces between tones, and you worry the tool won't last through another full sequence. Wind veers without warning, coming now from the northeast instead of the west, and it detunes your fourth tone, pulling it flat so it grates against the others like a mistuned string on a guitar. A small fire guttering near the altar stone, the only source of light besides the stars, threatens to die, its flames beaten down by wind, and without it, you'll lose your ability to see the chalk marks, to know which stone to strike next. Somewhere beyond the ditch a horn calls, long and mournful, a sound that belongs to this time, and sends a spike of fear through your gut, because you're not supposed to be here, not really, and if whoever blew that horn finds you inside the sacred circle, you have no explanation that will save you. The horn call is swallowed by the hum that never quite stops, that perpetual drone the stones make when wind passes through them, and you realise this is part of it too, the acoustic design, the way the circle itself sings even when no one strikes it. You pull out the birch bark again, squinting at the notations in firelight, and realise there's a second sequence you missed, numbers scratched beneath the first. 31425, not the ascending order you've been using, but something more complex. A pattern that spirals rather than climbs. You commit to the new sequence, positioning yourself at the third marked lintel instead of the first, and tap. The note is a C, round and full, and you let it bloom before moving to the first position, striking an A that harmonises with the still resonating C in a way the previous order never achieved. Fourth position, second, fifth, and with each tone the chord deepens, gains dimension, becomes something more than music. It becomes architecture, a structure built from sound that has walls and a ceiling and a floor that thrums beneath your feet. The lintels vibrate just enough to make the stars tremble in sympathy, or perhaps it's your vision shaking from the subsonic pressure building inside the circle, and the chord holds for 3 full breaths before it begins to slip, the tones pulling apart as the wind shifts again, and you lose the exact timing needed to maintain resonance. Dawn is hours away. You know this from checking the stars against the astronomy app on your phone before you stepped into whatever ritual transported you here, but the window for this working is narrow. The instructions were explicit about this, about how the door only opens when certain conditions align, when the geometry of Earth and Sun and stars creates a momentary acoustic lens that focuses sound in ways physics doesn't usually allow. You must keep the chord alive, must maintain it long enough to cross the threshold, or you'll be trapped here in the deep past with no way home and a very limited understanding of how to survive in Neolithic Britain. You align yourself on the midwinter axis, heel stone to altar stone, positioning your body so that you're standing on the line the sun will draw when it finally rises, so that your taps ride the path of light that's currently arcing beneath the horizon on the far side of the earth. One more cycle, you tell yourself, one more perfect sequence, and the door will open wide enough to step through. You begin the 3-1-4-2-5 pattern again, and this time everything clicks. The wind is steady, your timing is exact, the mallet strikes true despite its damaged tine, and the chord returns deeper than before, rounder, resonating not just in air but in earth, in stone, in the marrow of your bones. In the centre of the circle, the air darkens into something that isn't quite visible, a thin vertical slit in reality that you perceive, not with your eyes but with your ears, a rippling silence, wound where all the tones converge and cancel each other out in perfect destructive interference, creating a pocket of absolute quiet in the middle of overwhelming sound. You hold the chord, striking the sequence again and again, feeding it, keeping it alive, and the slit widens until it's a doorway tall enough to walk through, though walk seems like the wrong word for what you'd be doing because the threshold isn't located in space. Not exactly. It's located in sound, in the relationship between tones, in the mathematical ratios that govern harmony. Step through, and you'll be moving not from one place to another, but from one tuning to another, from one reality frequency to a different one. The stars wheel overhead, marking time in their ancient dance, and you realise with a jolt that they're moving too fast, that hours are passing in minutes, that the acoustic lens is bending time as well as space, and if you don't move soon, you'll miss the window entirely. You wait for the first cold blue of dawn, for that precise moment when the sun's light begins to bend around the curve of the earth and touch the heel stone, and when it comes, when that first ray of winter sun lances through the circle and strikes the altar stone dead centre, you know it's time to close the door. You walk the circle in reverse, counterclockwise against the sun, striking the lintels backward through the sequence, 5-2-4-1-3. Each tone now works to unmake the chord, to unweave the fabric of sound you've spent the night constructing, and you feel it unravelling, feel the tension in the air relaxing, the doorway beginning to close. After the final tap, you hold perfectly still and let the note decay to true silence. Not the absence of sound, but its resolution, all frequencies returning to their source, and as the last vibration dies, the slit opens behind your hearing, not in front of you, but somehow inside your head, and you understand that you've been standing in the doorway this whole time, that the threshold isn't something you cross but something you become. You step forward and the chalk beneath your feet becomes wet concrete. The stars vanish into light pollution, the massive trilithons flicker and are suddenly smaller, broken, diminished by centuries of weather and collapse and archaeological reconstruction. You're back standing inside the rope barriers that keep tourists away from the stones, and the sky is the wrong colour for deep night, dawn breaking pink and orange instead of the deep blue you just left behind. Your phone buzzes in your pocket, 17 missed calls, a dozen texts asking where you are, because apparently 3 days have passed since you stepped into the circle even though you experienced only one night, and you realise with a sinking feeling that time moves differently inside the acoustic lens that you've just lost a weekend to prehistory. Back home, back in your apartment with its thin walls and traffic noise, and the constant hum of electricity in the wires, something is off. Your phone rings, and the tone is different, shifted to an interval that sounds ancient, that resonates with something deep in your hindbrain. The elevator ding on your floor takes a new pitch, a perfect fifth above what it used to be, and it hangs in the air longer than it should, as if the shaft has become a resonating chamber. The crosswalk beep outside your window answers in fifths, harmonising with itself in ways electronic tones shouldn't be able to do, and you realise with growing unease that the world has been retuned, that by playing the stones you've adjusted some fundamental frequency, and everything in your environment is now calibrating itself to match. Rooms you enter gather their own resonances. You clap once to test the acoustics of your kitchen, and the air replies in Stonehenge's scale, producing overtones that climb toward the ceiling and hang there like visible structures. Your bathroom rings with a deep D when you flush the toilet, your bedroom hums an A when the radiator kicks on, and your living room produces a perfect fifth chord when you walk from the window to the couch, your footfalls exciting resonances in the floor that shouldn't exist in a modern apartment building. It's beautiful at first, this new tuning, this sense that you're living inside an instrument, that every action produces music, that the chaos of urban sound has been organised into something approaching harmony. You find yourself moving differently, timing your steps to produce interesting intervals, clapping in corners to hear how the room responds, humming notes to see what overtones emerge from the walls. But then it becomes disorienting. Alarms hide in harmonics. Your smoke detector's chirp is now a perfect octave above a frequency your refrigerator produces, and the two tones combine into a beating pattern that sounds exactly like your alarm clock, sending you into panic spirals at random moments throughout the day. Voices seem tuned to the ring, and conversations take on musical qualities that make it hard to focus on meaning. Your co-worker's speech patterns now emphasize the same intervals you heard in the Stones, and you find yourself listening to the melody of his words rather than their content, nodding along to rhythms instead of responding to questions. Your own voice sounds strange, resonating in your chest and head in ways it never did before, as if you've become an instrument too, as if the retuning is working from the inside out. You try to adapt. You download frequency analyzers and spectrum apps, trying to map the new acoustic landscape of your life, trying to find patterns you can predict and work around. You wear earplugs in public, muffling the world to manageable levels, but the tones penetrate anyway, conducted through bone, felt in your body even when your ears are blocked. You move through the city like someone learning to hear for the first time, and in a sense you are. You're hearing relationships between sounds that were always there but now they're foregrounded, impossible to ignore, dominating your perception, until the actual information carried by the sounds becomes secondary to their tonal qualities. On the next solstice, summer now instead of winter, you return to Stonehenge with a plan to test if you can retune back, if you can undo what you've done and restore your world to its previous discordant but navigable state. The circle remembers you. You feel it the moment you approach, the stones producing a welcoming hum in your personal scale, recognizing the frequency signature you've been carrying since that winter night. You try the inverse order of the sequence, softer taps to produce gentler harmonics, and you time it to match the wind differently, using the summer breezes that flow warmer and more chaotically than winter's steady cold. The door opens, yes, as you knew it would, but as you work through the sequence you feel something else changing, another layer of reality shifting its tuning, and you realize that each successful chord you play adjusts not just your perception, but the actual physical properties of sound in your environment, that you're rewriting acoustic physics itself in a bubble that travels with you everywhere you go. You complete the ritual and step back through, and now things are worse. Traffic sounds have organized themselves into rhythmic patterns that mimic heartbeats, making you constantly feel like someone is running toward you from behind. Bird songs have shifted into the pentatonic scale, and they sing in rounds canonically, as if they've been rehearsing. Rain on your window plays arpeggios, each drop time to produce ascending scales, and you start to suspect that the retuning isn't just changing how you hear, but changing how sound itself behaves within a certain radius of your body, that you've become a walking acoustic lens bending reality around you. You return again on the autumn equinox, then the winter solstice again, each time trying different approaches, faster tempos, different mallets, altered sequences, and each time the door opens and each time you make things worse, more coherent, more musical, until the modern world around you is tilted so far toward a prehistoric key that you barely recognize it. Your neighbors start to notice, commenting on how musical your apartment building has become, how the elevator seems to sing, how footsteps in the hallway ring like bells. Some find it charming, this new acoustic environment, but others are disturbed by it, complaining of headaches and vertigo, saying they can't think straight because everything sounds like it's part of a song they can't quite remember. You stand at your window in pre-dawn light, listening to a city that now sings more than it speaks, where alarms and sirens have tuned themselves into chords, where the rumble of the subway produces bass drones that underpin everything else like a massive organ, where even the wind through the buildings plays scales instead of just whistling randomly. One more trip to the Stones could make it all coherent, you think, could tune everything so perfectly that it all makes sense, that the chaos resolves into a single, massive symphony with every sound in its proper place. You picture it, a world where acoustic laws have been rewritten, where physics itself has been tuned to match the geometry of Stonehenge, where every city is an instrument, and every person a note in an endless composition. But you also remember why humans invented discordant sounds in the first place, because alarms need to be alarming, because signals need to stand out from background noise, because navigation requires the ability to distinguish between different information streams, not have them all blend into harmonic unity. You remember trying to hear your phone ring yesterday and missing the call because the ringtone had harmonized so perfectly with the ambient sound of traffic that it disappeared into the texture, became indistinguishable from everything else. You remember walking through a crosswalk while the signal was red because the beeping had become so musical, so integrated into the soundscape, that you stopped processing it as a warning and heard it only as part of the city's endless song. One more trip could make it all coherent, yes, but coherent for what purpose? Beautiful but useless, harmonious but dangerous, a world tuned to prehistoric frequencies that served prehistoric needs, where sound was primarily ceremonial, where acoustic design was about creating sacred space rather than conveying information efficiently. You think about emergency, sirens that sing in fifths, about smoke alarms that harmonize with refrigerators, about crosswalk signals that play arpeggios instead of alerting, and you realize that you're trading orientation and safety for beauty and belonging, that you're slowly making your world uninhabitable in your quest to maintain connection with something ancient and powerful. You set the antler mallet down on your windowsill, placing it carefully so it won't roll, and you make a choice. You will not return to the stones, will not attempt any more retunings, will let the world remain partially wild and partially harmonized, a compromise between prehistoric music and modern signal. The last overtoned ring in your chest fades as you make this decision. That perpetual hum you've been carrying since the first ritual finally quieting, but a fundamental remains. A quiet drone you can still hear if you focus, like a compass you can hear instead of see. Pointing always toward Salisbury Plain, toward the circle of stones that still remembers how to sing, toward a door in sound that you can open but have chosen to leave closed, at least for now, at least until you can be sure that what lies on the other side is worth the price of losing your way home. You set the antler mallet down on your windowsill, placing it carefully so it won't roll, and you make a choice. You will not return to the stones, will not attempt any more retunings, will let the world remain partially wild and partially harmonized, a compromise between prehistoric music and modern signal. The last overtoned ring in your chest fades as you make this decision. That perpetual hum you've been carrying since the first ritual finally quieting. But a fundamental remains. A quiet drone you can still hear if you focus, like a compass you can hear instead of see, pointing always toward Salisbury Plain, toward the circle of stones that still remembers how to sing, toward a door in sound that you can open but have chosen to leave closed, at least for now, at least until you can be sure that what lies on the other side is worth the price of losing your way home. But the world doesn't let you rest in that decision. 3 weeks after you place the mallet on the sill and walk away, you notice the retuning is spreading. Not just your apartment now, not just your building, but a growing circle with you at its centre, expanding outward at a rate you can measure if you pay attention, if you walk the streets with your ears open and your mind tracking, which sounds have shifted into the ancient scale, and which still retain their modern discord. You map it obsessively, marking boundaries on a street map with coloured pencil, your block entirely converted, the neighbouring blocks showing signs, the park 2 streets over beginning to resonate with that familiar Stonehenge hum when wind moves through the trees just right. The expansion is slow, perhaps 50 feet per day, but it's steady, inexorable, as if you've become a tuning fork, struck once and still vibrating, still sending out waves that reorganize everything they touch. You meet others who've noticed. A sound engineer at the coffee shop 3 blocks from your apartment stops you one morning, asks if you've heard it too, the way everything started ringing differently, the way the espresso machine now produces a perfect A when it releases steam, the way cups settling on saucers make intervals instead of just noise. You deflect, claiming you haven't noticed anything unusual, but he's insistent, excited even, pulling out his phone to show you frequency analysis charts, spectrograms that show the fundamental shifting across dozens of recordings he's made over the past weeks. He thinks it's some kind of acoustic phenomenon, maybe related to changes in air pressure or humidity, some meteorological event that's altering how sound propagates through the neighbourhood. You nod, non-committal, and leave before he can press you further, but his charts confirm what you already suspected. The retuning isn't in your head, isn't subjective, it's measurable, objective, real. A musician in your building, a cellist you've passed in the hallway but never spoken to, leaves a note under your door. She's noticed that her instrument has gone out of tune with itself, that the strings ring sympathetically with sounds from outside in ways they never did before, that when she plays certain passages the walls answer back, harmonizing, and she finds herself adjusting her playing to match the environment rather than standard tuning. She's not complaining exactly. The note makes that clear. She's fascinated, energized by it, finding new musical possibilities in the way her apartment has become an extension of her instrument. But she wants to know if you've experienced anything similar, if you have any theories, if maybe you'd like to collaborate on something, explore this phenomenon together. You don't respond to the note, afraid that engaging will reveal your role in this, that somehow your guilt will show through, that she'll look at you and know you're the epicenter, the source. The fundamental in your chest grows louder. You thought it was fading when you set down the mallet, but that was just a moment of quiet before it came back stronger, insistent, demanding attention. It pulses now, not constantly but in waves, and you start to notice the pattern. It intensifies when you're near acoustic focal points, places where sound naturally concentrates or reflects in interesting ways. Underground stations amplify it until you have to cover your ears, the fundamental resonating with the tunnel architecture, creating feedback loops that make your vision blur. Highway underpasses do it too, and parking garages, and the stone-walled cemetery 4 blocks north that predates most of the neighbourhood. You avoid these places when you can, but the city is full of them, and sometimes there's no choice but to walk through and endure the intensity, the way the fundamental swells until it feels like your ribcage might crack from the pressure of containing it. You start researching, trying to understand what you've done, what mechanisms you've triggered. The book that arrived on your doorstep with the mallet and instructions. You tear through it again, reading past the marked pages this time, looking for context, for warnings, for anything that might explain the expanding zone of retuned acoustics. You find references to other stone circles, other megalithic sites built with acoustic properties in mind, and a theory that these weren't just ceremonial spaces but actual instruments designed to manipulate sound in ways that could affect consciousness, could open doors in perception, could tune human awareness to frequencies that allowed communication with something the text never quite names, but implies exists in the spaces between tones. There's a passage about harmonic fields, about how sustained resonance at certain frequencies can create persistent alterations in local physics, acoustic imprinting on the environment that outlasts the original sound source, and you realise with growing horror that this is what you've done. You've imprinted Stonehenge's frequencies onto your neighbourhood, and now the imprint is growing, spreading, potentially unstoppable. You try to reverse it without returning to the stones. You spend a weekend playing recordings of industrial noise through speakers pointed out your window, trying to inject discord into the environment, trying to disrupt the harmonic patterns that have taken hold. It doesn't work. The noise simply gets incorporated into the larger structure, finding its place in the overtone series, becoming another voice in the chorus rather than drowning it out. You try white noise generators, tone generators producing random frequencies, even just banging pots and pans together at odd hours until your neighbours complain, but nothing breaks the pattern. The retuning has momentum now, has become self-sustaining, drawing energy from every sound made within its boundaries, using that energy to expand further, to bring more of the acoustic landscape into alignment with the fundamental. Your sleep deteriorates. In dreams, you're back at the stones, but now there are others there with you, figures moving in the darkness beyond the trilithons, and they're playing too, striking the lintels in sequences that counterpoint yours, building chords you never intended, opening doors you didn't know existed. You wake to find your room vibrating at the fundamental frequency, pictures rattling on walls, water in the glass on your nightstand showing concentric ripples like someone's tapping the table, though no one is. The building settles at night the way all buildings do, expansion and contraction, heating and cooling, but now it settles musically, playing descending scales as materials shift, and you lie awake listening to your home sing itself to sleep. People start moving, into the neighbourhood specifically because of the sound. You see it in local forums, on neighbourhood social media, posts about the amazing acoustics, about how musical everything feels, about what a creative and inspiring environment it's become. Artists are arriving, musicians and sound designers and composers, drawn by word of mouth, by recordings that have started circulating online, by the reputation that's building of a place where the laws of sound work differently, more beautifully. Rent prices tick upward. Coffee shops advertise their resonant spaces. Galleries promote acoustic art installations. A new music venue opens specifically designed to work with the ambient tuning rather than against it. You watch your neighbourhood transform, gentrifying on a wave of sound, and you feel like a fraud, like someone who's created something valuable entirely by accident and can take no credit for it, because taking credit would mean admitting responsibility, admitting you don't know how to control it, admitting you might have started something dangerous. The sound engineer from the coffee shop publishes a paper. You find it online, a preprint on an acoustics research archive titled Emergent Harmonic Structures in Urban Soundscapes, a Case Study. He's documented the phenomenon meticulously, recording sites across a half-mile radius, analysing the data, demonstrating that the acoustic environment is indeed shifting toward a specific set of ratios. A specific tuning system that he notes bears resemblance to scales found in various ancient musical traditions. He proposes several hypotheses: resonance effects from construction materials, electromagnetic interference affecting audio equipment, even mass psychological suggestion, but admits none fully explain the scope and consistency of the changes. The paper gets attention, not widespread, but enough, picked up by a few science blogs and acoustic specialty publications, and suddenly researchers are interested, wanting to visit, wanting to measure, wanting to understand. You panic. Researchers mean scrutiny, mean questions, mean eventually someone tracking the phenomenon back to its origin, back to you. You consider moving, just packing up and leaving, letting the retuned zone continue without you, but the fundamental in your chest suggests that won't help, that you're bound to it now, that wherever you go you'll carry it with you, starting new zones of retuning in whatever neighbourhood you land in next, spreading it across the city, eventually across regions, maybe across continents if you move enough. You're a carrier, infected with a frequency that wants to propagate, that uses you as its vector, and there's no quarantine possible because sound travels through everything, through air and water and solid matter, through walls and floors and the very earth itself. The cellist appears at your door instead of leaving another note. You open it to find her standing there with her instrument, and before, you can make excuses, she asks directly. It's you, isn't it? The centre of it. You try to deny it, but she shakes her head, not buying it, and explains that she's been triangulating, mapping where the effect is strongest, where the harmonics are purest, and every measurement points back to this building, this floor, this apartment. She's not angry. She emphasises that immediately, seeing the fear in your face. She's grateful, actually, because the retuning has opened up her playing in ways she never imagined, has made her reconsider everything she thought she knew about her instrument, about music itself. But she needs to know what you did, how you did it, because she wants to learn, wants to participate in whatever this is consciously rather than just being subject to it passively. You let her in because what else can you do? And over coffee you tell her everything. The book, the mallet, the solstice ritual, the time travel or dimensional shift or whatever it was, the realization that you've changed something fundamental about how sound behaves in your vicinity. She listens without interrupting, and when you finish she sits quietly for a long moment before asking if she can see the mallet. You retrieve it from the windowsill, hand it over, and she examines it carefully, running her fingers over the antler tines, testing its weight, and then she looks up and says, "You know you're not done, right? This isn't something you can just walk away from. It chose you, or you chose it, and now you have to see it through." You argue that you've made your choice, that you're not going back, that the risk is too high. She counters that the risk is higher now, with the retuning spreading uncontrolled, with no guidance or intention behind it except whatever momentum it's gathered on its own. She suggests that maybe the answer isn't to stop, but to direct, to shape the retuning consciously, instead of letting it sprawl chaotically, to turn it into something genuinely useful, rather than just beautiful and disorienting. She proposes a collaboration. She has musical training, understands acoustics and harmony, and how to work with resonant spaces, and together maybe you could figure out how to manage this, how to create boundaries or focal points, how to make the retuned zone work for people instead of just happening to them. You're resistant but also desperate for help, for someone to share this burden with, for another perspective on a problem that's been eating you alive for months now. You agree to think about it, and she leaves you her number, tells you to call when you're ready, and you spend the next 3 days barely eating or sleeping, just pacing your apartment and listening to it sing, listening to the neighbourhood sing, tracking the expansion of the retuned zone on your map, and trying to calculate how long before it reaches some critical threshold, some point where it can't be ignored or explained away as a local anomaly. The decision is made for you when the fundamental suddenly intensifies, doubling in amplitude overnight, strong enough now that other people are starting to feel it, starting to mention a strange pressure in their chests, a vibration they can sense but can't quite hear. Posts appear in neighbourhood forums asking if anyone else feels the humming, if maybe there's construction happening underground, some kind of machinery running constantly. You know what it means. The retuning has reached some kind of critical mass, has accumulated enough harmonic energy that it's starting to affect not just sound but physical sensation, the precursor to potentially affecting matter itself if the process continues unchecked. You call the cellist. She arrives within an hour, instrument in hand, and you explain what's happening, how the fundamental is growing, how it feels like pressure building with no release valve. She thinks for a moment, then suggests you need to create an outlet, a way for the accumulated harmonic energy to discharge safely rather than continuing to build. She proposes a performance, a public event where you deliberately work with the retuned acoustics, channeling them through music, giving them form and direction, and a way to express rather than just accumulate. It's risky. It means revealing yourself as connected to the phenomenon, but it might also stabilize things, might give you some measure of control. You agree because you're out of better options, and together you start planning. She brings in other musicians from the neighbourhood, people who've noticed the changes and adapted their playing to work with them, and you become the coordinator, the one who understands the fundamental, who can feel where the acoustic focal points are, who can guide the group to locations and times when the resonance will be strongest. You scout sites, the stone-walled cemetery, a highway underpass with particularly rich reverb, an abandoned church with intact but unused bells in its tower, and you map out a route, a procession that will move through the retuned zone hitting these focal points in sequence, creating a deliberate pattern of harmonic discharge that might release the built-up pressure. The night before the performance you return to Stonehenge one last time, but not to play the stones. You go to observe, to remember, to reconnect with the original source of all this. Security is tighter than it was on your first visit, or maybe you were lucky that winter solstice night, but you managed to get close enough to feel the stone's presence, to hear that perpetual hum they produce when wind threads through them. You sit in the grass beyond the fence line and you listen. Really listen, trying to understand what the stones were meant to do, what function they served beyond the ceremonial. And sitting there in the darkness you realise they were never meant to hold the door open, never meant to sustain the retuning permanently. They were designed for temporary openings, brief connections, moments of contact with whatever frequency realm lies beyond normal perception. You've misused them by trying to establish a permanent link, by carrying the resonance back with you instead of leaving it at the threshold. The performance happens on the spring equinox, deliberate timing to work with the astronomical alignments that seem to strengthen the effect. 24 musicians gather at your apartment, and you lead them out into the neighbourhood, carrying instruments, carrying the antler mallet which you've decided to use openly now, and you move through the streets playing. The cellist leads the melodic line, others provide harmony and rhythm, and you strike metal posts and concrete walls and stone surfaces with the mallet, adding percussive punctuation that resonates with the fundamental, that channels it outward rather than letting it accumulate inward. People come out of their homes to watch, to listen, some joining the procession, some just standing on stoops and sidewalks experiencing the sound. At each focal point you stop and play a longer piece, something the cellist has composed specifically to work with the site's acoustics, and you feel the fundamental responding, feel the pressure easing as the harmonic energy finds expression through the music. The stone-walled cemetery rings like a bell, the whole space vibrating in sympathy with the strings and wind instruments and your mallet striking granite headstones. The highway underpass becomes a cathedral, traffic noise from above integrating into the performance, car tyres on asphalt providing a steady drone that grounds everything else. The abandoned church wakes up, its bells humming in sympathetic resonance, even though no one's pulling the ropes, responding to the frequencies rising from below, and for a moment the whole neighbourhood sings together, coherent and intentional and managed. The pressure releases. You feel it in your chest, the fundamental finally relaxing, finding equilibrium instead of endless building tension. The retuned zone stops expanding, You verify this over the following weeks, walking the boundaries, discovering that they've stabilised, that the acoustic alterations have reached their limit, and are holding steady rather than continuing to spread. It's not perfect. You've still changed things permanently, still created a pocket of reality where sound behaves according to ancient rules, but it's contained now, manageable, a permanent feature of your neighbourhood rather than an encroaching wave threatening to swallow the city. You keep the mallet, but you don't use it casually, understanding now that it's a tool requiring responsibility and intention. The cellist becomes a regular collaborator, and together you develop a practice of periodic performances that maintain the balance, that keep the harmonic energy circulating rather than stagnating or building dangerously. Other neighbourhoods reach out, people who've heard about what you've done, who want something similar for their communities, but you refuse to export it, refuse to seed new retuned zones, knowing that one is enough, knowing that some doors should be opened rarely and carefully, rather than flung wide and left unguarded. The next story is about to begin. Please relax and enjoy. The warm rain comes in gentle waves across the plaza, stippling the ancient limestone with dark freckles that spread and merge. You stand near the base of El Castillo, feeling the drops tap against your shoulders, your hair, the back of your neck. Torches have been placed along the edges of the pyramid's terraces, their flames beading the stone with amber light that shivers in the wind. Around you, the crowd begins to murmur, then cheer raggedly, as the moon takes its first bite from the sun. The light shifts, thinning to something strange and flat, and you look up to see the shadow beginning its work. On the north staircase, the famous shadow appears, the first jagged triangle of the serpent materializing on the balustrade as if drawn by an invisible hand. You've read about this, watched videos, studied the geometry, but seeing it in person makes your breath catch. The shadow isn't static. It ripples with the movement of clouds across the eclipsing sun, alive in a way that photographs never capture. You move toward the stairs, testing the first step with your palm. The stone is slick from rain, warm from the day's heat still radiating upward, and you feel it humming. Not literally, but something close. A vibration that might be the drums from the crowd, or might be something deeper, older, resonating through limestone that has stood here for over 1,000 years. You climb to the first terrace landing, perhaps 15 steps up, and position yourself carefully. The rain has made everything treacherous, but you're here for a reason. Your hands are shaking slightly as you bring them together and clap once sharply. The sound cuts through the rain and crowd noise, and the pyramid answers, a bright ascending chirp that sounds exactly like the call of a quetzal bird. It's the famous acoustic effect of El Castillo, the clap echo phenomenon that has amazed visitors for decades, though most don't know that it only works from specific positions, specific angles. You've practiced this at home, clapping against walls, trying to understand the rhythm, the spacing. Now you need to execute it perfectly. You've memorized the pattern, 7 beats, 1 per landing, climbing the pyramid's terraces with mathematical precision. The first clap was exploratory. Now you start the sequence for real. 1. You wait, listening to the chirp decay into the rain-thick air, counting heartbeats. 2. The second clap produces another chirp, slightly different in pitch, harmonizing with the memory of the first. You're watching the serpent shadow as you do this, and you notice something the tourist guides never mention. When the chirp's timing aligns with your rhythm, the shadow's triangular scales seem to sharpen, edges becoming crisper, more defined. When you rush or delay even slightly, the shadow blurs at the margins. You adjust your stance, shaking rain from your hands. 3. This clap is confident, clean, and the shadow responds with a visible snap of definition. 1. Triangle suddenly vivid against the stone. You're onto something. The crowd below has mostly turned their attention to the eclipse itself, watching the sun die by degrees, but a few people nearby have noticed your careful climbing, your measured claps. A drummer somewhere in the plaza is maintaining a steady pulse, and you latch onto it, letting it guide your internal clock. 4. You're on the third landing now, rain running in small streams down the steps behind you. The serpent's body is beginning to take shape, triangle after triangle linking together in a chain of shadow that descends the balustrade. Each chirp from the pyramid seems to travel through your chest before dispersing into the air, and you're learning to read them, to sense when the echo is true and when it's muddy, absorbed by rain or scattered by wind. The temple, you realize, likes confidence. Tentative claps produce tentative chirps. The stone wants to be spoken to clearly, demanded of, treated like the resonant instrument it is. 5. A priest moves through the crowd below, his headdress catching the torchlight and throwing gold flashes across the plaza. Guards in modern uniforms watch the staircases, ensuring no one climbs too high, but they haven't stopped you yet. Perhaps they're too distracted by the eclipse, or perhaps they recognize something in your deliberate movements, the ritualistic precision of your ascent. A child near the base of the pyramid giggles and tries a clap of her own, and the plaza erupts in laughter as the pyramid chirps back, the sound innocent and joyful. You smile despite your concentration. The temple doesn't discriminate, it sings for anyone who asks properly. 6. You're high enough now that the view has expanded, the plaza spreading below you like a vast dark courtyard scattered with firefly lights from torches and the occasional illegal flash of a smartphone. The light continues to drain from the sky as the eclipse progresses, the world taking on that peculiar quality of wrongness that comes when familiar physics seems to pause. The rain is intensifying, fat drops that splat against the limestone and make every surface gleam. Your palms are starting to sting from the repeated impact, skin reddening, but you don't stop. You're on the 6th landing, one more to go, and the serpent is almost complete, its body a continuous chain of shadow triangles rippling down the stone. You position yourself for the 7th beat, the final one, and as you do, the world flickers. Just for an instant. You see the plaza doubled, overlaid with itself, the torchlit crowd in traditional dress, and a ghostly impression of modern tourists in bright ponchos, their smartphones raised like so many glowing rectangles, recording everything. The two images shimmer over each other, neither quite real, and then the vision snaps back to the present. The torch smoke smells sharper. The edges of everything seem brighter, more defined, as if the world has been brought into sudden focus. 7. You clap with everything you have, and the chirp that returns is perfect, crystalline and bright, hanging in the air longer than physics should allow. The serpent's shadow completes itself, head linking to tail in a closed loop of geometry and light. The torches along the pyramid's edges gutter as if in response, flames bending in unison, and the night shifts around you. The wind drops completely. The sound of the crowd tightens, contracting to circle your heartbeat, and you feel something you've never felt before. Held, suspended, as if the pyramid itself has become aware of you. You're a note being played on an instrument carved from limestone and time, and the resonance travels through your bones. The drumline below continues its steady pulse, and you understand with sudden clarity that the sequence isn't finished. There's a return rule, something you half remember from your research, a warning buried in academic papers and archaeological footnotes. The eclipse is reaching maximum totality, the sun reduced to a burning ring in the sky, and you have a window, brief, precise, to complete the pattern. You need to descend. You need to reverse the rhythm. You move carefully down the rain-slick steps, one landing at a time, until you reach the serpent's stone head at the base of the staircase. This is where the shadow serpent's mouth rests, carved in relief on the balustrade, jaws perpetually open. You plant your feet at the mouth's edge, rain streaming down your face, and begin the reverse sequence. 7. The clap echoes differently from down here, the chirp lower, more resonant. You're working backward now, peeling away the pattern you just created, and with each beat something in the soundscape changes. 6. The crowd noise seems to peel back, layers of it lifting away like veils. 5. The rain's hiss becomes less insistent, fading to background static. 4. You can hear your own breath now, harsh and quick, the only organic sound in a world of stone and shadow. 3. The drums are still there, but distant as if coming from another room, another time. 2. Everything is tightening down to essentials. Your heartbeat, the rain's dry tick against ancient limestone, the whisper of wind through carved channels. 1. You hold the final beat, waiting for the drums to land to give you the perfect moment. The serpent's mouth, just shadow and stone, begins to darken further, not as if light is leaving it, but as if it's becoming more itself, more present, a depth that shouldn't exist in carved rock. The drumbeat lands, you clap. The mouth becomes a vertical slit of pure shadow, dimensionless, a doorway that has nothing to do with the physical world you know. And between that clap and the echo's return, the world flickers again. This time it's not the plaza that doubles, it's your memory. You see the stairwell of your apartment building, the utilitarian concrete and flickering fluorescent light, and as you watch, a version of yourself climbs those stairs and claps, testing the echo. The stairwell answers with a bright Quetzal chirp, the same impossible sound the pyramid makes, and you understand with sickening certainty that something has changed. Something permanent. The successful completion of the sequence has altered an echo in your modern life, transplanted temple acoustics into the mundane geometry of home. But you don't have time to process this because you're falling forward. The serpent's mouth swallowing you, rain turning to hiss, torches to static, stone to something formless and warm and dark. You tumble through space that isn't space, time that moves sideways, and then there's impact. Hard, sudden, real. The smell hits you first. Wet concrete. The particular mildew tang of an underground parking garage. Ozone from fluorescent lights. You're sprawled on the floor of somewhere modern, somewhere that smells like your city, and when you stand up on shaking legs you recognise the stairwell. Your apartment building. Your stairwell. The same concrete steps you climb every day, except they're humming now, vibrating with something that definitely wasn't there before. You clap once without thinking, an involuntary test, and the stairwell answers with that bright, perfect chirp, the call of a bird that has never lived in this hemisphere, the acoustic signature of a pyramid 900 miles away. It rings and rings, that impossible sound, bouncing off walls that have no business producing it. Your stairwell will never sound the same. Over the next hours, then days, you discover the extent of what you've done. Ordinary places sing back to you in ways they never did before. The subway platform at your stop. You've stood there hundreds of times, listening to the low rumble of approaching trains, the screech of brakes, the general metallic din. Now when you clap absently while waiting, the platform chirps back, bright and clean. An underpass you walk through daily to avoid a busy intersection. Its echo has transformed from a muddy, bass-heavy reverberation to something that pings with crystalline precision, triangular sound shapes that seem to hang in the air like the shadow serpent's scales. Your apartment hallway clicks when you walk it now, each footstep producing a discrete stone-like percussion that reminds you of feet on limestone. At first it's beautiful. You find yourself stopping in unlikely places, clapping just to hear the response, marvelling at how your city has become secretly musical, encoded with temple acoustics. You record some of the sounds on your phone, play them back, confirm that yes, this is really happening. These concrete and steel spaces are somehow generating echoes that belong to a pyramid. But then the unsettling part begins. Crosswalk signals at busy intersections emit their chirp, chirp, chirp to guide the visually impaired, except now that sound gets masked, buried under the new acoustic signatures that bleed through from the temple realm. You find yourself confused at corners, uncertain when it's safe to cross, the familiar audio cues scrambled. Footsteps in parking garages, yours and others, hide themselves in the glossy, reverberant echoes that shouldn't exist in these spaces. You lose track of people walking behind you, their approach masked by the beautiful, impractical soundscape your ritual has created. You try to research what you've done, digging through academic papers and esoteric forums, piecing together references to acoustic time bridges and resonance-based translocation. The clap echo phenomenon at Chichen Itza isn't just a curiosity of architecture, it's a mechanism, carefully designed, that maps sonic patterns onto space-time in ways modern physics doesn't account for. By completing the 7-beat sequence during an eclipse, during the brief window when the serpent shadow links head to tail, you've established a permanent connection. Each successful trip through the serpent's mouth rewrites one echo in your modern life, transplanting temple acoustics into the prosaic world you depend on, and you can still travel. That's what you discover on the third night, standing in your apartment hallway at 2 a.m, unable to sleep because your building has become too alive with sound. You can trace the pattern again, find the right architectural geometry, execute the 7 beats with precision, time it to your heartbeat, and step through into the pyramid's realm, into rain and torchlight, and the press of ancient crowds. You can stand in the plaza and feel the stones hum, breathe smoke and petrichor, experience the vertigo of being unstuck in the ordinary flow of time. But each trip costs you. Each successful sequence rewrites another echo. The parking garage at your office building begins to ping like a temple chamber. The pedestrian bridge over the highway starts to throw Quetzal chirps when trucks pass underneath. The acoustic landmarks you've unconsciously relied on to navigate your city, the particular way your favourite coffee shop sounds, the echo pattern of the library reading room, the specific reverberation of your local grocery store. These are being overwritten, one by one, replaced with limestone signatures that belong to a different time, a different purpose. You become careful about where you clap, paranoid about triggering the response. You start wearing headphones constantly, flooding your ears with music to mask the temple sounds. But it doesn't really help because the acoustics are real, physical, not auditory hallucinations. Other people don't seem to notice, or if they do, they dismiss it as quirks of the buildings, odd reverberations they've never paid attention to before. Only you know the truth. Only you feel the weight of what you've done. 2 weeks after the eclipse, you stand in a parking structure near downtown, rain falling through the open levels in sheets, and you test the pattern again. Your hands move through the 7-beat sequence almost automatically now, muscle memory encoded from that night at the pyramid. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the structure responds, chirping back in perfect pitch, each echo sharper than the last. The serpent shadow materializes in your mind's eye, not physically present but vivid enough to follow, and you feel the fabric between times growing thin, preparing to tear. You could step through. The doorway is there, forming in the deeper shadows between concrete pillars, a vertical slit that smells like warm rain and torch smoke. You could return to the plaza, to the ceremony, to that perfect suspension where the pyramid holds you like a resonant note. But you hesitate, hands still raised, breath fogging in the cold air because you know what it will cost. The parking structure where you're standing will keep its new acoustics permanently. Another piece of your navigational soundscape will be rewritten. And if you keep going, if you chase the perfection of the ritual again and again, eventually you'll transform your entire city into a temple, beautiful and impractical, unsuited for the ordinary business of living. The rain intensifies, hammering on the concrete levels above, and you make a decision. You lower your hands. You step back from the forming doorway and watch it fade, the shadow receding, the connection not severed but left dormant. The parking structure still chirps when sound moves through it, still carries that limestone signature, but you don't deepen the bridge. You don't take the step that would pull you back to torchlight and drums. Walking home through rain-dark streets, you practice a different rhythm, beats tapped silently on your chest, a pattern you keep internal, private. The plaza's music is still there, carried in your heartbeat, in the muscle memory of your hands, in the way you time your steps to the remembered drumline. You don't need to carve it into every concrete surface to keep it. You can hold it inside, a secret resonance that doesn't require the world to reshape itself around your experience. Over the following weeks, you learn to navigate the altered soundscape. You memorize which corners have been rewritten, which pedestrian paths now carry temple acoustics that mask the normal urban cues. You adjust, adapt, find new ways to orient yourself that don't depend on the familiar echoes. The crosswalk signals remain problematic, but you learn to look more carefully, to double-check the lights rather than trusting the audio. Footsteps in garages. You become more visually aware, glancing over your shoulder more often. The temptation never entirely leaves. There are nights when you stand in your apartment listening to the hallway click with each passing neighbour, and you think about the plaza, about the way the rain felt on limestone, about the precision of the shadow serpent's scales snapping into focus, about being held in that impossible suspension, a note played on an instrument built to bridge centuries. You think about the priest's gold headdress flashing in torchlight, the child's laugh when the pyramid chirped back, the way the night felt when wind dropped and sound contracted to your heartbeat. But you also think about what you'd lose. Not just the practical navigation of your city, though that matters, but something harder to articulate. The sense of home as home, not as echo of elsewhere. The ordinary thuds and scrapes and reverberations that mark familiar spaces that tell you where you are without thinking. The prosaic soundscape you've lived in all your life, unglamorous but yours, mapped to your movements and memories in ways that don't require perfection. On a clear night 3 months later, you return to Chichen Itza, not physically, but in memory, in that space between waking and sleeping where the pattern still lives. You stand in the plaza with rain freckling the limestone, torches beading the pyramid's edges, the moon taking its bite from the sun. You climb the stairs landing by landing, palm testing the warm slick stone, and you clap the sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The serpent shadow ripples alive, scales clicking into place, and you feel the world thin around you, feel the temple reaching out to hold you in resonance. But you don't complete the return sequence. You stand at the serpent's mouth with your palms hovering, heartbeat aligned with the phantom drumline, and you choose not to descend in reverse. You choose to walk away from the forming doorway, to keep that particular echo unrealized. The plaza music stays inside you, tapped rhythms on your chest, silent patterns that guide your steps, but it doesn't bleed further into the concrete and steel of home. You wake in your apartment with rain tapping the windows, and the hallway outside still clicks when you walk it, still carries that limestone signature from the first crossing. The parking structure downtown still chirps, the subway platform still sings. These alterations are permanent, marks of the night the serpent descended and pulled you through its shadow mouth. But they're limited now, contained, a partial rewriting rather than a complete transformation. You've learned to live with them, these temple acoustics scattered through your modern life. Sometimes they're beautiful. You'll turn a corner and hear that bright Quetzal chirp and remember torchlight, remember rain, remember being held in the pyramid's resonance. Sometimes they're frustrating, practical hindrances that require workarounds and extra attention. But they're yours now, part of your specific geography, sounds that no one else hears quite the way you do. And you carry the pattern still, the 7-beat sequence encoded in your hands, ready if you ever need it. The doorway remains available, the serpent's mouth waiting in deeper shadows, torch smoke and warm rain just a rhythm away. You could return. You could complete another sequence, rewrite. Another echo, chase that perfect suspension one more time. But for now you walk through your city, feet clicking on ordinary concrete and practice the silent drumline. Beats tapped on your chest that belong entirely to you, that reshape nothing but your own internal landscape. The plaza's music lives there, held safe, not carved into every surface but preserved in the spaces between heartbeats, in the rhythm of your breath, in the careful timing of steps that carry you home through rain-dark streets that are slowly, imperfectly, learning to be themselves again. But for now you walk through your city, feet clicking on ordinary concrete, and practice the silent drumline. Beats tapped on your chest that belong entirely to you, that reshape nothing but your own internal landscape. The plaza's music lives there, held safe, not carved into every surface but preserved in the spaces between heartbeats, in the rhythm of your breath, in the careful timing of steps that carry you home through rain, dark streets that are slowly, imperfectly, learning to be themselves again. 4 months pass, and autumn arrives with its own kind of rain. Colder, sharper, nothing like the warm drops that freckled the plaza. You've settled into a routine that accommodates the altered acoustics. You take different routes to work that avoid the most problematic echo zones. You've learned to trust visual cues over audio ones in situations where the temple sounds create confusion. Your apartment building's clicking hallway has become almost comforting, a nightly reminder of where you've been, what you've touched. But something else is developing, something you didn't anticipate. Other people are starting to notice patterns you've left behind. Not the acoustic changes, those remain largely invisible to anyone who wasn't paying attention to the soundscapes before, but something more subtle. A street musician who plays saxophone near the subway entrance where the platform chirps has begun incorporating those exact pitches into his improvisations. He doesn't know why those notes feel right, why they seem to resonate with the space in ways other melodies don't, but you hear it every time you pass. He's playing the pyramid song without realizing it. A sound engineer who works in the office building with the rewritten parking garage has started using recordings from that space in her ambient music project. You discover this by accident, scrolling through a local artist's playlist, and there it is, the distinctive ping and crystalline reverb of limestone acoustics rendered in parking garage concrete. She's titled the track Unexpected Resonance, and in the description she writes about stumbling onto these sounds, about how they seem to appear overnight, about the mysterious way certain spaces in the city have become more alive. You should feel guilty about this unintended propagation, but instead you feel something closer to wonder. The pattern is escaping your control, finding its own expression through people who have no idea what they're channeling. The temple wants to be heard, and it's using whatever instruments it can find: a saxophone, a digital recorder, the unconscious humming of a barista who works in the coffee shop near your altered pedestrian bridge. Winter comes, and with it your first real crisis. You're walking home late from a friend's apartment, cutting through the parking structure to avoid icy sidewalks, when you hear voices echoing in the levels above. Two voices, young, probably teenagers, and they're experimenting with the acoustics, clapping and laughing as the structure chirps back at them. You freeze between parked cars, listening as they stumble through variations, clearly delighted by the discovery. Then one of them finds it. Accidentally, without training or intention, they clap out a pattern that's close enough to the 7-beat sequence to trigger a response. The air between concrete pillars shimmers, thickens, and you see the vertical slit beginning to form, that doorway of shadow that smells like torch smoke and rain. The teenagers see it too. Their laughter cuts off abruptly, replaced by confused silence. One of them whispers, "What the hell is that?" You move without thinking, stepping into view and clapping loudly, deliberately off rhythm, breaking the pattern. The doorway wavers and collapses, shadow returning to ordinary shadow, and the teenagers spin toward you, faces pale in the fluorescent light. You make yourself smile, gesture casually at the space. Weird echo in here, right? Freaks me out sometimes. Your voice sounds steadier than you feel. They relax slightly, looking between you and the spot where the doorway almost formed. "Yeah," one of them says slowly. "Weird echo?" They leave quickly after that, footsteps receding down the ramp, and you're left alone with your hammering heart and the realization that the doorways don't only respond to you. Anyone with the right rhythm, intentional or accidental, can trigger them. You've scattered these potential crossings throughout your city, and you have no way to control who might find them. Sleep doesn't come easily that night. You lie in bed listening to your building settle, the familiar clicks and pings of your rewritten acoustics, and consider the implications. How many other people might stumble onto the pattern? What happens if someone steps through unprepared, without understanding the cost, without knowing how to return? You imagine teenagers appearing in the plaza during an eclipse ceremony, confused and frightened, or worse, lost in the space between times, trapped in that warm dark tunnel where rain turns to static. The next morning you begin a project you've been avoiding. You map every location in your city where you've completed a sequence, every space where the temple acoustics have taken root. Using a notebook and a city map, you mark them carefully. The parking structures, the subway platforms, the pedestrian bridges and underpasses, your apartment building, your office. 12 sites in total, 12 potential doorways scattered across the urban landscape like hidden mines. You start visiting them systematically, one per day, testing the acoustics to confirm they're still active. They are. Every single site still carries the limestone signature, still responds with that bright Quetzal chirp when you clap. At each location, you try to understand what made you choose it. What about these spaces called to you strongly enough that you enacted the ritual? Most were places you passed through regularly in that first confused week after your return, when you were still learning the extent of what you'd done. A few were deliberate experiments, attempts to understand the mechanism. All of them are now permanently changed. At the pedestrian bridge over the highway, you stand in falling snow and watch rush hour traffic below, listening to the way trucks passing underneath trigger those impossible chirps. You're not the only one who's noticed. Someone has started leaving offerings here, small arrangements of stones and feathers on the bridge's railing. You don't know if they understand what they're doing, whether they sense the temple presence intuitively, or if they're just responding to the space feeling sacred in a way it didn't before. Either way, the offerings continue to appear, replaced and refreshed, maintained by unknown hands. You meet someone at the coffee shop near your office, a woman who always sits at the corner table, and over several weeks of casual conversation, you learn she's an anthropologist specializing in urban sacred spaces. She talks about how cities develop their own pilgrimage sites, often in unexpected locations, highway underpasses, subway platforms, anonymous concrete structures that suddenly become invested with significance. It's like the sacred finds cracks to seep through, she says, stirring her coffee, unaware that you're one of those cracks. Places that shouldn't matter become places people feel compelled to visit. You want to tell her everything. The words build behind your teeth, the eclipse, the serpent shadow, the 7-beat pattern that rewrites acoustics and opens doorways through time. but you swallow them back because what would be the point? She wouldn't believe you, or if she did, she'd want to study it, document it, bring attention that would only make everything more dangerous. So instead, you ask about her research, and she describes patterns she's noticed. Spontaneous shrines appearing in the most unlikely places, always in locations with unusual acoustic properties. There's this parking garage downtown, she says, and your coffee cup freezes halfway to your mouth. 4th level, near the southeast corner. Someone's been leaving coins there, arranging them in patterns. I've been photographing the arrangements. They're surprisingly sophisticated, almost like they're mapping something. She pulls out her phone, shows you images of coins laid out in triangular shapes that you recognize immediately. The serpent scales, the shadow pattern from the pyramid's balustrade. Your hands are shaking. That parking garage, that's one of your sites, a place where you completed the sequence during a moment of reckless experimentation. Someone has found it, sensed something there, started responding to the temple presence in the only way they know how, and the pattern they're creating, even without understanding its origin, mirrors the geometry that made it possible. The anthropologist notices your reaction. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Just cold, you lie, setting down your cup. The weather's getting to me. But it's not the weather. It's the realization that the temple isn't content to remain passive, isn't satisfied with just colouring the acoustics of your city. It's calling to people, drawing them to the altered sites, teaching them the patterns through intuition and dream logic. You wonder how many others are experiencing what you experienced. The doubled vision, the flickering memories, the sense of being held in resonance. You wonder if any of them have stepped through yet, or if they're all still circling the doorways, leaving offerings, arranging coins, feeling the pull without understanding its source. You start having dreams that aren't quite dreams. In them you walk through this plaza at Chichen Itza, but it's overlaid with your city, the pyramid rising where your office building stands, the ball court where the subway station should be, the cenote opening in the middle of an intersection. Other people walk through this doubled space, some in traditional dress with jade and feathers, others in modern clothes carrying smartphones and coffee cups. None of them seem surprised by the overlap. They navigate both geographies simultaneously, moving through time like it's just another kind of space. In one dream you see the child who laughed at your claps during the eclipse ceremony. She's older now, maybe 14, and she's teaching someone else the pattern, a friend, another girl about her age. They're standing in your altered parking structure, and the older girl is explaining how to space the claps, how to listen for the temple's response. My grandmother taught me, she says in the dream, though you know that's impossible because you were the one who brought the pattern back. You were the first. But in dream logic it makes perfect sense. The knowledge has its own lineage now, passed down through whatever channels the sacred uses when it decides to propagate. You wake from these dreams with your chest tight, the silent drumline pulsing beneath your ribs. Sometimes you find yourself tapping the pattern unconsciously, on your desk at work, on the steering wheel of your car, on the edge of your dinner plate. Your hands remember the sequence more perfectly than your mind does, and they want to execute it to complete it, to open more doors. Spring arrives with thunderstorms that remind you of the plaza. You're caught in one while walking home, rain soaking through your jacket, and without thinking you detour to the nearest of your altered sites, the underpass that pings with crystalline precision. You stand there dripping, listening to the rain hammer on concrete above, and you realise that the acoustics have evolved. The temple sounds are richer now, more layered, as if they've had time to settle into the modern materials, to learn how to speak through rebar and aggregate instead of limestone blocks. You clap once, experimentally, and the response is extraordinary. A complex chord of chirps, harmonics you've never heard before, overtones that seem to come from multiple time periods simultaneously. The underpass is becoming a more sophisticated instrument, developing capabilities that the pyramid itself might not possess. You understand then that this isn't just transplantation, isn't just temple acoustics imposing themselves on modern spaces, it's hybridization. The two soundscapes are learning from each other, creating something new. A figure appears at the far end of the underpass, silhouetted against streetlights. You tense, expecting a confrontation, but as they walk closer, you recognize the anthropologist from the coffee shop. She's holding an umbrella, and her expression when she sees you is knowing, unsurprised, as if she's been waiting for this meeting. You've been leaving the patterns, she says. Not a question. There's no point denying it. I didn't leave them. I opened something and they appeared. She nods slowly, stepping closer. Rain drums on her umbrella, and in the space beneath it you can see her eyes are bright with fascination rather than fear. I've been tracking them for months, 12 sites, all connected to you. I've seen you at each one, taking notes, testing the sounds. I didn't understand what you were doing until I started having the dreams. Your breath catches. The plaza, the overlap. The plaza, she confirms. And the serpent and the rain and the feeling of being, she struggles for words, played, like an instrument. Like the whole city is becoming an instrument and we're the notes being sounded. She looks around the underpass, at the rain-slicked walls, listening to the complex harmonics still echoing from your clap. What did you do? What did you open? So you tell her. Standing in the underpass with rain providing percussion, you describe the eclipse at Chichen Itza, the 7-beat sequence, the shadow serpent linking head to tail. You explain the cost, the rewritten echoes, the acoustic landmarks erased and replaced. You describe stepping through the serpent's mouth, falling through warm darkness, landing in your ordinary stairwell transformed. You show her the pattern, tapping it out on your chest, the silent rhythm you've been carrying for months. She listens without interrupting, and when you finish, she's quiet for a long time, processing. Finally, she says, "You're worried about what you've started, about who might follow." Teenagers almost stepped through one of the doorways last winter. They didn't know what they were doing, just stumbled onto the rhythm by accident. What happens to them if they cross over unprepared? Maybe nothing, she says thoughtfully. Maybe the temple knows the difference between intentional contact and accident. Or maybe, she pauses, choosing words carefully, maybe it's time to stop thinking of this as something you did wrong and start thinking of it as something you discovered. A phenomenon that was always there, waiting for the right conditions to become visible. You want to believe her, but the weight of responsibility sits heavy on your chest, pressing down with the same insistence as the silent drumline. Every time someone crosses, they rewrite another echo. Eventually the whole city could be transformed, unrecognizable. Or, she counters, eventually the city becomes a living bridge between times, a place where past and present aren't separate but overlapping. Maybe that's not a disaster. Maybe that's an evolution. The conversation stays with you through the following weeks as spring deepens into summer. You meet with the anthropologist regularly now, sharing observations, comparing notes on the altered sites. She started documenting everything properly, not for publication, she assures you, but for understanding. She brings other people into the conversation, carefully chosen, a sound engineer who specialises in architectural acoustics, a physicist interested in temporal mechanics, a musician who's been incorporating the temple sounds into his compositions without knowing their source. They form a loose collective, these people drawn to your accidentally sacred spaces. They don't try to exploit the phenomenon or draw public attention to it. Instead, they treat the sites with respect, almost reverence, visiting them regularly to monitor changes, leaving their own small offerings, learning to hear the layers of sound that indicate when the doorways might be close to forming, and slowly, carefully, a few of them start to attempt the crossing. The musician goes first, on a night when storms roll through with lightning that feels properly ceremonial. You guide him through the 7-beat sequence at one of the more stable sites, helping him understand the rhythm, the breathing, the way to listen for the pyramid's response in concrete and steel. When the doorway forms, you stand beside him at its threshold, and together you watch him step through, watch him dissolve into warm shadow and torch smoke. He's gone for what feels like hours, but measures as minutes on your watch. When he returns, stumbling back through the doorway into ordinary parking structure light, his face is transformed, not frightened, but awed, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I heard it," he keeps saying. "The drums, the actual drums, and the rain on those stones. It's not like rain here, it's..." He can't finish, overcome, and you understand perfectly because you've been carrying those sensations in your body since the eclipse. The sound engineer goes next, then the physicist. Each crossing rewrites another echo somewhere in the city, adds another layer to the hybridized acoustics. But it doesn't feel like loss anymore, doesn't feel like damage. It feels like the city is developing a richer vocabulary, learning to speak in multiple temporal dialects simultaneously. Your coffee shop begins to carry temple harmonics. A public library starts to ping with limestone precision. A hospital waiting room develops a chirp that sounds like comfort in stone. People notice these changes, but they interpret them generously, attributing them to renovations, new construction materials, improved acoustic design. The city's soundscape is evolving, they say, becoming more interesting, more alive. No one suspects that what they're hearing is the voice of an ancient pyramid teaching modern spaces how to sing. The next story is about to begin. Please relax and enjoy. The rain comes warm, hissing where it strikes the hot stone of the lantern room. You lean into the great bronze mirror, feeling its weight resist the crank even as your shoulders burn. The mirror is spider-cracked, a lattice of fractures spreading from a dark centre like frozen lightning, but it still catches the oil fire guttering in the copper brazier behind you. Each rotation throws a ragged beam across the harbour, a sick yellow finger of light that stutters where the cracks intersect. You wipe rain from your face and look out through the eastern opening. The storm has turned the Mediterranean into a churning slate, waves shouldering against the breakwater with rhythmic thunder that you feel through your feet. But it's what you see between the waves that stops your hand on the crank. In the rain-smeared distance, impossible flashes. A container crane, rust red against the storm, its lights blinking in sequence. The blue-white glare of sodium lamps along what should be empty rock. The clean concrete line of a modern breakwater extending past where the Hepta Stadium causeway ends. Your city, your time, bleeding through. A conch call rises from the harbour. Low, desperate, answered by another further out. Ships feeling their way towards safety as the storm drives them onto the shoals. You've been keeper of the Pharaohs for 3 years, and you know that sound. It's the sound of men who think they're about to die. "Keeper!" The shout comes from the stairwell, barely audible over the wind. Nessos bursts into the lantern room, his young face slick with rain and oil smoke. He's your assistant, 16 and wiry, always moving too fast. He presses something into your wet hands, a rolled papyrus, the vellum soft with moisture. "The sky letter," he gasps. "The old keeper's chart. You need to see." You unroll it with fumbling fingers. It's a star map, but not like the navigation charts you learned in school. This one shows constellations traced in thick black ink, but between the stars someone has drawn lines, patterns, angles. Notes crowd the margins in ancient Greek, the letters running together. You recognise a few words: persuade, see, mirror, home. What is this? Nessos grabs your shoulder, turns you toward the eastern opening. When you sweep the beam, watch. When it crosses the bear, the water. You're already cranking the mirror faster now. The beam swings across the harbour mouth, illuminating rain and spray. It touches the horizon, and you see it. The water goes glass still for a single breath. The modern skyline sharpens. You can read the letters on a billboard, in English, advertising something you can't make out before the beam passes and the storm rushes back. The keepers have been doing this for generations, Nessos says, his voice pitched high with excitement or fear. Tracing patterns to calm the sea, to call ships home. But the mirror, it cracked during the last omen, and now it's doing something else, you finish. Your hands are shaking. You look down at the chart, at the constellation traced in the centre. Orion. Your home constellation. The one your father taught you to find on clear nights from your balcony. 3,000 years and a lifetime away. A deep groan rises from below, metal on stone. Footsteps on the stairs, heavy and many. The chief engineer arrives first, his face grey beneath his tan. "The counterweight is jammed," he announces without preamble. "The rotation mechanism, something bent in the last tremor. You'll have to crank manually." Behind him 2 slaves carry amphorae of oil, sloshing and heavy. "Last of the reserve," one mutters. "Maybe 2 hours worth if the wind doesn't." "It's enough." You say it with more confidence than you feel. You're already doing the math. 2 hours of oil, manual cranking, the storm eye moving at how fast? You remember the satellite loop on your weather app, the slow spiral of the system. The eye should pass over the lighthouse in maybe 60 minutes, maybe less. The third man to enter the lantern room makes your stomach clench. Roman uniform, the red cloak dark with rain. Tribune Gaius, the garrison commander, and he's looking at the mirror with the expression of someone who's made a decision and doesn't care about the cost. "Keeper," he says, and it's not a greeting. "By order of the prefect, you will dim the light." "What?" "Enemy ships, Phoenician raiders or Cilician pirates. Intelligence is unclear, but they're using the storm as cover, and if we guide them to harbour, there are our ships out there." You You point toward the conch calls still rising from the dark. Fishing boats, merchants, maybe a naval patrol, which is precisely why we cannot illuminate the harbour entrance. Dim the light, keep it low until the storm passes. They'll die on the shoals. Gaius's hand moves to his sword hilt. That is not your decision, Keeper. This is a military matter. You look at Nessos, at the engineer, at the two slaves. The engineer is carefully studying the brazier. Nessos's jaw is clenched so tight you can see the muscle jump. The slaves have already started backing toward the stairs. Get out, you say to Gaius. His eyes narrow. What? Get out of my lighthouse. I answer to the prefect, not to you, and until he walks up these stairs himself, I'm keeping the light burning. You move to block his path to the brazier, to the mirror. Get out. For a moment you think he's going to draw the sword. His hand tightens on the hilt, knuckles white. Then he spins on his heel and stalks toward the stairs. The prefect will hear about this, he throws over his shoulder, and when the raiders burn the grain quarter, remember, that blood is on your hands. The engineer waits until the footsteps fade before speaking. He'll be back, with soldiers. I know. You turn to Nessos, to the star chart. Show me exactly what I need to do. Nessos spreads the papyrus on the stone floor, weighing the corners with bronze sighting tools. His finger traces the constellation, Orion, the hunter, hanging over the southern horizon. 7 stars for the main pattern. You need to sweep the beam so it connects them, 1 to 1, in order. Betelgeuse to Rigel, Rigel to Bellatrix. His finger moves across the chart, tracing invisible lines. When you complete the pattern, the storm eye will centre on the beam. The old keeper called it the gate. Your only gate home. Home. The word feels strange in your mouth. You look out at the harbour, at the rain-blurred lights of a city that doesn't exist yet and shouldn't be visible. What happens to here? To now? Nessos shakes his head. I don't know. The chart doesn't say. But Keeper... He looks up at you, and you see real fear in his eyes. Every sweep changes something. The last keeper, before the mirror cracked, he tried to map a constellation he didn't know. When he finished, half the harbour district had different names. Buildings he swore had been there were gone. His own house, he swallows. His wife didn't recognise him. The wind gusts through the eastern opening, scattering rain across the star chart. You grab it before it can blow away, the vellum already darkening with water. 7 stars, maybe 60 minutes before the eye passes. You do the calculation, 9 sweeps per star, accounting for the crank speed and the mirror's rotation. 63 sweeps total if you don't stop, if the oil holds, if the mirror doesn't shatter completely, if Gaius doesn't come back with soldiers. Help me set up the pattern, you tell Nessos. I need reference points, something I can sight against to keep the beam accurate. The engineer steps forward. I can rig a plumb line from the top of the mirror housing. You sight along it, adjust the crank speed to keep the beam tracking. He's already moving, pulling rope from a coil near the wall, but Keeper, manually cranking for an hour. I'll manage. You won't, but what choice is there? It takes 10 minutes to rig the sighting system. 10 minutes while the conch calls grow more desperate, while the storm builds toward its peak. You can feel it in the pressure, in the way the rain changes angle, in the deep subsonic rumble that might be thunder or might be the sea itself. Finally you position yourself at the crank, one eye on the plumb line, one on the harbour. Nessos stands ready with the star chart, calling out adjustments. The engineer feeds oil to the brazier, keeping the flame steady. You take a breath, taste salt and smoke, and begin. The first sweep is experimental, feeling for the angle. The beam swings across the water, illuminating white caps and spray. You're aiming for Betelgeuse, the red giant that marks Orion's shoulder. In your time, in your sky, you could find it with your eyes closed. Here, you squint at the cloud cover, at the rain, trying to see through to where the stars should be. More east, Nessos calls. 3 degrees, no, 5. There, the beam. Steadies. For a heartbeat nothing happens. Then the water beneath the light goes still, glass smooth, and you see it clearly. Your city's waterfront, the breakwater, the lights of cars moving along the corniche. And something else. A shimmer in the air, like heat haze, like reality bending. You crank harder, pulling the beam toward the second star, Rigel, the blue giant at the hunter's foot. The mirror groans, the crack widening with a sound like ice breaking, but the beam holds, stuttering but steady, and you trace the line from Betelgeuse down. "There!" Nessos shouts. "Hold it! Hold!" The beam connects. For an instant you see both harbours superimposed, ancient and modern, galleys and cargo ships, stone and steel. Then the light passes and everything snaps back. You're gasping, your shoulders already burning, but you've completed the first link. Below, a new sound. Shouts, many voices, soldiers' boots on stone. Gaius is coming back. "Keep going," Nissos urges. "We can barricade—" "No." You're already moving to the second link, Rigel to Bellatrix. Just keep calling the angles. Don't stop. The second sweep goes faster. You're finding the rhythm now, the pattern. The crank fights you, the bent mechanism catching every third rotation, but you lean your weight into it and force it through. The beam tracks across the storm, and again the water stills, again the shimmer. But this time, when you glance at the harbour, something is different. The stone quay where the fishing boats tie up, you could swear it had a different name. Not the canopic quay, something else, something older, something you remember from your morning walks before you ended up here. But when you try to focus on the memory, it slides away, replaced by certainty. It's always been the canopic quay. Always. "Keeper," Nessos grabs your arm. "Your phone. Look." You fumble it from your pocket with numb fingers. The screen is cracked, wet, but it still glows. The map app is open. You had it running when the storm hit, when the first impossible rain drove you up into the lantern room. The blue dot marks your position atop the Pharos, but the labels on the map, the street names there. "Canopic quay," you read aloud. The word feels wrong in your mouth, too formal, too ancient. But the English letters are clear on the screen. You're certain, absolutely certain, that 5 minutes ago it said something else, but you can't remember what. "It's starting," Nissos whispers. "Each sweep, it's rewriting the names, making them match." "Match what?" "Here, now, this time." He points at the harbour, at the ancient city spread below the lighthouse. You're stitching the two together. Every connection you make, the names bleed through. Thunder drowns out whatever he says next. You pocket the phone and grab the crank, fighting through the fear. Third link, Bellatrix to Scythe. Your shoulders scream, but you pull harder, watching the plumb line, listening to Nissos call the angles. The beam swings wide, catches a ship, a trireme, oars flashing in the light, and you see the crew cheering, pointing up at the Pharos. You just saved those lives. But what are you doing to your own? The door at the base of the stairs crashes open. Boots on stone, coming up fast. Gaius didn't waste time. "How many soldiers?" you ask the engineer. He glances down the stairwell. 10, maybe more. "Keeper, they'll—" "Help me move the beam cart." It's a heavy wooden frame used for transporting replacement mirrors. You and the engineer muscle it across the floor, wedging it against the door to the lantern room. It won't hold long, but it might buy minutes. You're back at the crank before the first soldier hits the barricade. The door shudders but holds. You start the fourth sweep, Scythe to Alnitak, and the whole tower groans. Not from the soldiers. From something deeper, a vibration in the stone itself, as if the lighthouse is remembering something or trying to forget. Halfway through the sweep, the mirror catches a gust of wind and spins too fast. The beam whips across the harbour, touching stars at random, and the effect is immediate and terrifying. The water convulses, ancient and modern churning together. You see a container ship flicker into existence beside a Roman galley. You see the breakwater twist, stone and concrete braiding together like rope. The air fills with a sound like glass singing. "Control it!" Nissos is screaming. "You have to control the pattern." You drag the mirror back, force it to the correct angle. The hallucination snaps shut, leaving only the storm, but your hands are shaking so badly you nearly lose your grip on the crank. The door splinters. A spear point punches through the wood, misses the engineer's shoulder by a finger's width. Gaius's voice. "Break it down! Now!" "I need to confess something," Nessos says suddenly. He's staring at the mirror, at the crack spreading across its surface. The mirror. It didn't crack during an omen. It cracked because of me. You don't stop cranking, but you turn your head enough to see him. He's crying, tears mixing with rain. "I dropped it," he whispers. "When we were polishing the surface, I dropped the bronze weight. The old keeper, he saw, but he didn't report me. He said the mirror was old anyway, that it would crack soon regardless. But I know it's my fault it's failing now." Another impact on the door. The beam cart shifts, wood groaning. maybe 30 seconds before they break through. Listen to me. You have to shout over the wind. It doesn't matter how it cracked. What matters is what we do now. Can you help me finish this? He nods, wiping his face. Yes, Keeper. Then get ready. When they come through that door, I need you to keep calling the angles. Don't stop, no matter what happens. Understand? I understand. The 5th sweep, Alnitak to Alnilam, the first 2 stars of Orion's belt. Your whole body is shaking now, muscles pushed past their limit. But the rhythm is there, burned into your nerves, and you follow it. The beam traces the line, the water stills, and this time when you look at the harbour you see people. Figures on the quay, watching the lighthouse. Some are wearing chitons and cloaks, some are wearing t-shirts and jeans. They exist in the same space, the same moment, translucent and overlapping. The beam cart explodes inward, kicked apart by armoured boots. Gaius storms through, sword drawn, 6 soldiers behind him. "Seize the keeper!" he roars. But the engineer is already moving. He grabs a polished shield from the wall, one of the backup reflectors, kept for repairs, and holds it up in the path of the main beam. The light catches the shield's surface and splits, throwing a scatter of smaller beams across the lantern room. One hits Gaius in the face, blinding him. He staggers back, sword swinging wildly. "Keep cranking," the engineer shouts at you. You crank. Alnilam to Mintaka, the last link in the belt. Nessos is calling angles, his voice cracking, but you trust him. The beam finds the line, holds it, and the tower shudders again. This time you feel something shift in your chest, in your memory. You remember walking on the Hepta Stadium causeway this morning. No, the causeway is ancient, it's half ruined. No, you definitely walked it. You remember the coffee cart at the halfway point, the vendor who always... The memory fractures. You can't hold both versions. The causeway is modern, paved with asphalt. The causeway is ancient, built by Alexander's engineers. It's both. It's neither. The contradiction makes your skull ache. Gaius has recovered, wiping his eyes. "Kill the flame," he orders the soldiers. "Do it now." 2 of them rush the brazier. Nessos throws himself in their path, too small to stop them but brave enough to try. They knock him aside, reaching for the oil shutters. The engineer swings the shield like a weapon, the bronze edge catching one soldier across the helmet. The man drops, but the other reaches the brazier, starts closing the shutters, and the lighthouse screams. Not a human sound, not the wind. The stone itself, the foundations 300 feet below, the whole massive structure crying out like something alive and wounded. The soldier at the brazier stumbles back, hands over his ears. Everyone freezes, including you. For 3 heartbeats, nothing moves. Then the eastern wall cracks, a deep fissure running from ceiling to floor, and through it you see the storm and something else, something impossible. Lightning, but it's not falling from clouds, it's rising from the water, blue-white tendrils reaching up toward the lighthouse's peak, toward the beam. "The eye!" Nessos gasps. He's pulling himself up, blood running from his nose. "It's coming. Keeper, you have to finish the pattern before..." Thunder obliterates his words. The lightning touches the lantern room, grounds itself in the bronze mirror, and for an instant everything becomes light. Pure, white, absolute. You can't see, can't hear, can only feel the crank in your hands and keep turning, following the pattern burned into your muscles. When your vision clears, the soldiers are gone. Gaius is gone. The engineer is slumped against the wall, breathing hard but alive. Nessos is beside you, one hand on your shoulder, steadying you. 2 more links, he says. His voice is calm now, certain. Mintaka to Rigel, then Rigel back to Betelgeuse. The pattern completes. How much time? Look. You look up through the broken wall. The clouds are moving, rotating, and at the centre, clear air. Stars. The storm eye, maybe 5 minutes away, maybe less. Spinning directly toward the Pharaohs. "Oil?" you ask the engineer. He checks the brazier, the amphory. "Enough? Barely. If you don't stop." "I won't stop." But your body might. Your arms are numb, your shoulders grinding bone on bone. You've been cranking for how long? 40 minutes, an hour. Time has become elastic, unreliable. You focus on the next sweep, only the next sweep. Mintaka to Rigel, the long diagonal across Orion's form. The crank catches, the bent mechanism fighting you. You lean your full weight into it, feel something tear in your shoulder, keep pushing. The beam swings out, finds the angle Nisos calls. The water stills, and this time the harbour doesn't just shimmer, it stabilises. Ancient and modern lock together, no longer flickering but solid, real, both existing simultaneously. On the quay below, the translucent figures solidify. You see a woman in a chiton carrying an amphora. You see a man in a business suit checking his phone. They walk past each other without acknowledgement, as if they've always shared this space, as if the 3,000 years between them is nothing but a word, a label, arbitrary and meaningless. Your phone buzzes in your pocket. You want to check it, but you can't let go of the crank. Nisos pulls it out for you, holds it up. The map is redrawing itself live, streets and districts shifting, names flowing like water. Pharos Ward, Hepta Stadium Road, Canopic Square. English words, Greek roots, all the landmarks of your city renamed with echoes of the ancient world. One more, Nisos whispers. Rigel to Betelgeuse. Close the circuit. The storm eye is overhead now, the wall of churning cloud forming a perfect cylinder around the Pharos. Inside the eye, the air is still, the rain stopped. Stars blaze overhead, impossibly bright, and you can see Orion clearly. Not on a chart, not in your memory, but there, directly above, waiting. You start the final sweep. The crank screams, the mirrors crack, spreading with sounds like small caliber gunfire. But the beam holds, tracking from Rigel's blue fire toward Betelgeuse's red glow. The water below becomes glass, becomes mercury, becomes something that isn't water at all but a surface, a membrane between moments. Halfway through the sweep, the mirror seizes. The bent mechanism jams completely. Metal, grinding on stone. You pull harder, throwing all your remaining strength into it, but it won't move. The shutter, Nessos says, we can manually adjust. No. The engineer pushes past him, grabs the crank beside you. Together, on 3. You count. On 3, you both pull. The crank shifts an inch, 2 inches. The beam continues its arc, agonizingly slow, creeping toward Betelgeuse. You can see the star clearly now, a red giant burning at the hunter's shoulder, and the beam is almost there. Almost. Gaius appears in the stairwell. His face is bruised, bleeding, insane with rage. He's holding a torch, pulling it from one of the wall sconces. If I can't control the light, he screams, then no one will. He throws the torch toward the oil amphorae. Everything becomes slow. You see the torch tumbling through the air, flames streaming. You see Nisos diving toward it, too far away. You see the engineer letting go of the crank, reaching for a wet cloth on the floor. You see the amphora, full of oil, waiting. And you see the beam, inches from Betelgeuse, from completing the pattern. You let go of the crank with one hand, grab a bronze sighting tool from the floor and throw it. The tool hits the torch mid-flight, knocks it toward the eastern opening. The torch tumbles through the broken wall, falls into the night, disappears. Gaius howls and charges. The engineer swings the wet cloth like a whip, catches him across the face. He stumbles, trips over the broken beam cart, goes down hard. You're back on the crank with both hands, pulling with everything left. The engineer rejoins you. The mirror groans, surrenders, begins to move again. The beam tracks the final inches, touches Betelgeuse, and the pattern completes. The world cracks open. Not metaphorically. The air splits, a vertical seam appearing in the centre of the lantern room, and through it you see water. Not harbour water, storm-tossed and grey. Moonlit water, calm and silver, leading away into distance. The seam is narrow, maybe 3 feet wide, but it extends from floor to ceiling, and when you look into it you see your city, your real city, your time waiting on the far side. Go! Nisos is pushing you toward the opening. The eye is passing. You only have seconds. Come with me. You grab his arm. Both of you, all of us. But the engineer shakes his head. This is your gatekeeper, shaped by your constellation, your stars. We don't belong there. Nessos. The boy smiles and he looks older suddenly, wiser. I'll be fine. I've always been fine. This is my time. He presses something into your hand, the star chart rolled tight, in case you need to find your way back. The tower shudders. The seam is already narrowing, the storm eye moving past. You can hear the wind building again outside, the rain returning. You look at Gaius, unconscious on the floor, at the engineer, bleeding but standing, at Nessos, brave and young and impossible. At the lantern room, the cracked mirror, the guttering fire that you've kept burning through the storm. Then you step through the seam. The transition is instant and brutal. One moment you're in the ancient lantern room, rain and oil, smoke and heat. The next you're standing on wet pavement, modern shoes splashing in a puddle, under squall clouds that are already breaking apart. The moon is visible, nearly full, and beneath it the harbour spreads out. Your harbour, with its breakwater and shipping lanes and the lights of buildings rising up the slopes, but different. The signs are different. You walk forward on shaking legs, following the waterfront toward where your apartment should be. The streets are familiar, the layout unchanged, but every sign you pass makes you stumble. Pharos Ward, where it should say El Anfushi. Hepta Stadium Road, where it should say El Corniche. Canopic Square, where the name has always been something else, something you can't quite remember. Your phone buzzes. A news notification. Municipal authorities confused by sudden appearance of alternate street names. Historians claim designations are historically accurate for Greco-Roman era Alexandria, but residents insist streets have always borne these names. Investigation ongoing. You reach into your pocket, find the bronze shard you didn't realise you'd grabbed. A piece of the mirror still warm, edges sharp, and the star chart, dry despite everything, its vellum soft beneath your fingers. Your building is where it should be, but the address plaque has been replaced. Instead of a number, it bears an inscription in Greek. Pharos, home. Inside, your apartment is unchanged. Your furniture, your books, your coffee maker on the counter still half full from this morning. Or was it 3,000 years ago? The temporal headache makes you sit down hard on the couch. You pull out your phone, try to ground yourself. Social media is full of people discussing the street names, posting pictures of the new signs. Some people swear the names just appeared overnight. Others are certain they've always been there, that this is how Alexandria has always been labelled, that the old names were never real. You scroll through your own photos looking for evidence. There, a picture from last month, a selfie on the waterfront, and in the background you can just make out a street sign. You zoom in. The letters are blurred, but you can read enough. El Anfushi. Except when you blink, look again, the same sign says Pharos Ward. Both are real. Both have always been real. The city remembers both. You walk to your window, look out at the harbour. The Pharos is gone, of course. Collapsed in an earthquake a millennium and a half ago. The ruins buried under the Sate Bay fort. But you can see where it stood. The point of land jutting into the water. And in the moonlight, just for a moment, you see it. A ghost tower, a shadow in stone. Its light sweeping across the water in a pattern you know by heart. 7 stars. 1. Constellation. A circuit completed and never-ending. You set the star chart on your desk beside your laptop. You place the bronze shard next to it, a paperweight from impossible history. Then you open your laptop and pull up a Starfinder app, the kind that overlays constellation lines on a camera view of the sky. The storm has cleared completely now. Through your window you can see Orion rising in the southeast, just as it should in November, just as it always has. Betelgeuse, Rigel, the belt stars shining clear. The question forms before you can stop it. What if you trace the pattern in reverse? What if you could undo what you did, restore the names, separate the times that you've braided together? The app shows the inverse pattern, the lines running backward from Betelgeuse to Rigel to Mintaka. But would you? Could you? And what would happen to Nessos, to the engineer, to all the ships you saved by keeping the light burning? Would they blink out of existence, retroactively drowned, because you decided your present was more important than their past? Your phone buzzes again. Another news alert. Local historians celebrate rediscovery of ancient Alexandria's original street layout. City council debates whether to acknowledge historical names alongside modern designations. Some citizens report experiencing dual memories of the same locations. You are not alone in this. The whole city is learning to hold both truths, both timelines, both names. The coast refuses to forget. You close the Star app, close the laptop. The bronze shard catches the moonlight, throws a scatter of reflections across your wall, small broken beams that trace no pattern, follow no constellation, illuminate nothing but the space you're standing in. Outside, a ship's horn sounds in the harbour. answered by another further out. The sound of vessels finding their way home through the dark. The sound of lives saved by a light that should have gone out centuries ago but somehow, impossibly, still burns. You pick up the star chart, unroll it one more time. Nisos's notes are visible in the margins, his handwriting small and careful. At the bottom, almost hidden, a final line in Greek. The keeper who traces the stars keeps 2 times. The keeper who turns away keeps none. You don't have to decide tonight. Maybe you'll never decide. Maybe the question isn't whether to restore what was or preserve what is, but how to live in a city that remembers everything, that refuses the clean amnesia of history, that insists on holding all its names at once. You roll up the chart, place it in a drawer beside your own journals and maps and the accumulated debris of your impossible journey. Then you go to the kitchen, pour the old coffee down the sink and start a fresh pot. The smell is ordinary, grounding, real. Through the window, the lights of Alexandria, ancient and modern, renamed and remembering, shimmer in the harbour haze. The Pharos is gone. The Pharos has always been there. Your city is 3,000 years old. Your city was founded yesterday. All of it true, all of it home. You carry your coffee to the window, watch the ships moving in the harbour, each one following a beam of light that might be lighthouse or memory, or something caught between. The bronze shard is still warm in your pocket, a piece of the mirror that's stitched 2 times together, and as you sip your coffee you wonder, on the next clear night, when Orion rises full and bright, will you go to the waterfront? Will you open the star app, trace the patterns in reverse, try to unravel what you've done, or will you trace the pattern again, strengthen the stitching, make permanent what was meant to be temporary, bind your present to its past so tightly that no one, not even you, can tell where one ends and the other begins? The question hangs in the air like salt, like heat, like the smell of oil and rain. Outside, the harbour keeps its secrets, the coast keeps its names, and somewhere in the space between moments, in the membrane between was and is, a young assistant named Nisos tends a light that will never go out, calling ships home through storms that haven't happened yet and have never stopped happening. You touch the window glass, leave a fingerprint on the cool surface. In the morning you'll go to the waterfront, you decide. You'll walk the renamed streets, read the new signs, let your mind hold both versions without choosing. You'll carry the star chart and the bronze shard. You'll remember the weight of the crank, the heat of the fire, the sound of Nissos calling angles while the storm tried to tear the world apart. And if you see the ghost of a lighthouse on the point, if you see its beams sweeping the harbour in a pattern that shouldn't exist, you'll know. Some things, once joined, can't be separated. Some lights, once kindled, burn forever. Some coasts remember everything, refuse to forget, and hold their names like tides, always moving, always returning, always both. The coffee is good, the night is quiet, the harbour is home, and high above, invisible in daylight but always present, Orion the hunter keeps his watch, his stars patient and eternal, waiting for the next keeper to trace the pattern, complete the circuit, find their way through the gate that opens only when the storm's eye centres on the beam and the mirror cracks and the impossible becomes, for one perfect moment, the only truth that matters. You finish the coffee as dawn starts to break. Pale grey light spreading across the water. You haven't slept. Every time you closed your eyes you saw the lantern room, the cracked mirror, Nessos's face as he pushed you toward the seam. The bronze shard in your pocket has finally cooled, but you keep touching it anyway, confirming its reality, its weight. Your phone rings. The sound is so normal, so mundane that you almost laugh. It's your colleague from the university, Dr. Yara Mansour, her voice bright with excitement, even at 6 in the morning. Have you seen the news? The street signs? Someone's claiming it's a mass hallucination, but I've been through the municipal archives all night and... She stops. Are you okay? You sound strange. I'm fine. The lie comes automatically. Just didn't sleep much. The storm? What storm? It's been clear all night. You look out at the harbour, at the breakwater still wet from waves, at the scatter of palm fronds on the street below. Evidence of the storm is everywhere. Except, according to Yara, there was no storm. You feel the headache building again, the temporal dissonance pressing against your skull. Never mind, you say. I'll meet you at the university. Give me an hour. You shower. trying to wash away the smell of oil smoke that probably isn't there, dress in clean clothes that feel wrong after the weight of wet linen. The bronze shard goes into your jacket pocket, the star chart you leave on the desk, but you take a photo of it first, just in case. The walk to campus takes you along the waterfront. In the growing light you can see the new signs clearly, brass plaques mounted beside the modern street signs, inscribed with Greek letters and their English translations: Pharos Ward, Hepta Stadium Road, Canopic Square. But it's the people's reactions that make you slow down, watching. A woman in a business suit stands in front of a sign, her face confused. She pulls out her phone, takes a picture, then checks something, a map app maybe, or old photos. Her lips move, sounding out the Greek letters. Then she shakes her head and keeps walking, and you see the moment the confusion smooths away, replaced by certainty. Of course the street is called Pharos Ward. It's always been called that. An old man sits on a bench staring at the harbour. As you pass he says, without looking at you, "I remember when this was El Anfushi, my grandfather's shop." He stops, frowns. "No, Pharos Ward. The shop was on Pharos Ward." But his hands are shaking and you see him grip the bench as if the ground might dissolve beneath him. You want to stop to tell him he's not crazy, that both memories are real. But what good would that do? What could you say that wouldn't make it worse? The university is in chaos. Students cluster in the courtyards, comparing photos on their phones. Faculty members argue in the hallways. You find Yara in her office, surrounded by open books and rolled maps, her grey hair escaping its usual neat bun. "Look at this." She shoves a map toward you, an 18th century survey of Alexandria, the kind used by Napoleon's expedition. The street layout matches exactly with what's appearing on the signs, but here, she pulls up a modern map on her laptop. The modern names are still in the digital databases. Both sets of names exist, but people can only remember one at a time, depending on, I don't know what it depends on. Context? Focus? It's like some kind of quantum observation effect applied to memory. You lean over the old map, tracing the familiar streets. The Hepta Stadium Causeway, the Pharos Peninsula, the Canopic Way running east-west through the ancient city. Everything is where it should be, where it was 3,000 years ago, where it is now. The topology hasn't changed, only the labels, the names, the way people hold the space in their minds. "There's something else," Yara's voice drops. "I've been contacted by 3 other historians this morning, one in Athens, one in Rome, one in Istanbul. They're all reporting similar phenomena in their cities, ancient place names appearing overnight, dual memories, people insisting contradictory things are both true." She looks up at you, and her eyes are sharp, analytical. "This isn't local. This is spreading." The bronze shard burns in your pocket. You think about the beams sweeping across the harbour, stitching times together. You think about the pattern, 7 stars, 1 constellation, and wonder. What if other patterns exist? What if other keepers in other lighthouses on other coasts have been tracing their own constellations, completing their own circuits? What if the membrane between past and present is thinner than anyone knew, and all it takes is the right light, the right angle, the right storm? "I need to check something," you tell Yara. "The Kite Bay Fort. Is it open this early?" "The fort? Why?" She sees your face, stops asking questions. "Ahmed is doing a dawn survey this morning. I'll call him, tell him you're coming." You're already moving toward the door when she calls after you. "Whatever you're looking for, be careful. I don't know what's happening, but it feels big, like we're standing at the edge of something we don't understand." You nod. Keep walking. Behind you, you hear her picking up the phone, speaking in rapid Arabic, making arrangements for you to access the fort, the ruins, the place where the pharaohs stood for 16 centuries before earthquake and time brought it down. The fort sits at the end of the Pharos Peninsula, 15th century Mamluk stone built from the ruins of the ancient lighthouse. You've been here dozens of times. It's part of your research, part of why you came to Alexandria in the first place, chasing the ghost of the pharaohs through historical records and archaeological digs. But now, walking toward it in the early morning light, it feels different, heavier, more real. Ahmed meets you at the gate, a young archaeologist with a careful smile and questions in his eyes. "Dr. Mansour said you needed access to the underwater ruins. The dive team isn't scheduled until next week, but I can take you to the observation platform. Actually, I need to see the foundation maps, the surveys of the original Pharos structure before it collapsed." He looks surprised but leads you inside, down stone corridors into the fort's administrative section. The survey maps are kept in climate-controlled cases, preserved from salt air and time. Ahmed spreads them out on a light table, the translucent sheets glowing. This is the most recent synthesis, he says, pointing to a detailed plan. Combines underwater sonar, historical descriptions, and the stone blocks we've recovered. The foundation was massive, truly massive, and here, his finger traces a circular structure at the centre. This was the base of the tower itself, 300 feet tall, maybe more. The ramp spiralled up inside, and at the top, the lantern room, you finish. Your voice sounds distant to your own ears. Bronze mirror, oil fire, visible for 30 miles. Exactly, though we still don't know exactly how the mirror mechanism worked. Descriptions are vague. Counterweights, rotation, some kind of focusing system. Lost technology, he grins. Every archaeologist's favourite words. You lean closer to the map, studying the foundation plan. The circular chamber, the spiral ramp, the careful engineering that kept the tower standing through storms and earthquakes for 1,600 years. And there, marked in the surveyor's careful notation, stress fractures in the stone, dating to the 8th century. Cracks that weakened the structure, made it vulnerable when the earthquake finally came. Cracks that look, to your eye, exactly like the pattern spiderwebbing across the bronze mirror in the lantern room. Ahmed, you say slowly, have there been any reports of unusual activity at the fort? Lights, sounds, anything strange? He hesitates. There was something last night. The night watchman reported seeing, well, he called it a glow, coming from the water, from the submerged ruins, blue-white, pulsing. He thought it was bioluminescence at first, but it was too regular, too structured. Ahmed shrugs. Probably just a dive light, someone exploring without permission. Or lightning, you think. Lightning rising from the water, reaching for a tower that no longer exists, completing a circuit 3,000 years in the making. You spend another hour with the maps, photographing them, comparing them to the star chart image on your phone. The pattern is there if you know how to look for it. The foundation structure, the way the stones were laid, the careful geometry, it all echoes something celestial, something planned. The Pharaoh's wasn't just a lighthouse. It was a marker, an anchor point, a place where the boundaries between times could be deliberately thinned. When you emerge from the fort, the sun is fully up, the harbour busy with morning traffic. You stand at the point where the Pharaohs once stood, looking down into the clear water at the massive stone blocks visible below. Tourist boats are already arriving, their guides reciting the history. Built by Sostratus, dedicated to the saviour gods, one of the 7 wonders, destroyed by earthquake, gone forever. Except it's not gone. You stood in it. You cranked its mirror, kept its fire burning, saved lives by its light. It exists somewhere, in some layer of time that's been pressed against your present, like pages in a book. Your phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. You need to see this. Coffee shop on Hepta Stadium Road, corner of Canopic, now. No signature, no explanation. You should ignore it, should go back to the university, should talk to Yara about what you found in the foundation maps. But something in the message, the use of the new street names, the urgency, makes you change direction. The coffee shop is small, tucked between a pharmacy and a bookstore. You almost miss it because the sign above the door is in Greek letters, Cafeneo, coffee house. But the interior is modern, espresso machines, Wi-Fi passwords on chalkboards, students with laptops. The cognitive dissonance makes your head throb. A woman sits alone at a corner table. She's maybe 60, white hair cut short, wearing practical clothes that might have been fashionable 20 years ago. She sees you enter, raises a hand, and you recognise her, or think you do. Something about her face, her posture, triggers a memory that feels borrowed, impossible. Sit, she says when you reach the table. Her accent is strange, Greek underneath Arabic, underneath something else, layers of language stacked like sediment. You have questions, I have some answers, not all but some. Who are you? My name is Thalia. I was a keeper, like you. Not of the Pharaohs. I worked the lighthouse at Rhodes, the one that stood before the Colossus fell. I traced my pattern 40 years ago in 1985, during a hurricane that history says never reached the island. She smiles, thin and sad. But it did reach. I know it did. I remember. Your hand finds the bronze shard in your pocket. How did you know about me? Because the patterns are spreading. Every keeper who completes a circuit creates a ripple, a disturbance in the membrane. Others of us, there aren't many, but there are some, we can feel it. A new joining, a new stitch in the fabric. She pushes a worn notebook across the table. This is what I know, what we've learned over the years. You open the notebook. The pages are filled with handwriting in multiple languages: Greek, Arabic, Latin, English, others you don't recognize, maps, star charts, diagrams of lighthouse structures, and names. Dozens of names, each with a date and location. We call ourselves the keepers of the membrane, Thalia says, those who stood at the boundary and made the crossing. Each of us changed our cities, our coasts, our timelines. Each of us lives now in places that remember more than one history. Why? The question comes out harsh, desperate. Why does this happen? Why can a lighthouse, a mirror, a pattern of stars, why can that change reality? Thalia leans back, her eyes distant. The ancient builders knew things we've forgotten. They understood that light is memory made visible, that attention shapes reality, that the boundaries between times are not walls but membranes, thin, permeable, waiting to be crossed. They built the lighthouses as transit points, as places where keepers could guide not just ships but moments, navigating between what was and what is. But the cost. You think of the renamed streets, the dual memories, the old man on the bench gripping tight to keep from falling through reality. People are confused, lost. Some of them can't reconcile the contradictions. Yes, Thalia's voice is hard now. That's the price. Every joining creates instability, cognitive dissonance. People caught between versions of their own lives. It fades eventually. The new names become normal, the old names become dreams, and most people forget there was ever a contradiction. She taps the notebook. But some don't forget. Some of us remember both, hold both, live between. You flip through the notebook, reading the entries. A keeper in Istanbul, 1995. Pattern traced during an eclipse. A keeper in Lisbon, 2003. Pattern traced during an earthquake. A keeper in Boston, 2011. Pattern traced during a nor'easter. Each one completed a constellation circuit. Each one stitched their present to their past. Each one left their city changed, remembering, renamed, rebuilt in the image of what it once was. What happens if we stop, you ask? If we refuse to trace the patterns, refuse to complete the circuits? Thalia's face hardens. Then the lighthouses stay dark. The ships founder. The lives that would have been saved are lost, and the past stays past, safely distant, unable to inform or complicate the present. She leans forward. Is that what you want? Clean amnesia? A world that forgets its own foundations? I want people to stop being confused. I want the old man on the bench to remember his grandfather's shop without feeling like he's losing his mind. Then teach him to hold both. Thalia's voice is fierce now. Teach everyone to hold both. That's the real work, not the tracing of patterns, but the integration afterward, helping people understand that they can remember multiple versions, that contradiction is not madness but depth, that a city can be both ancient and modern, that a coast can carry multiple names and still be home. You close the notebook, push it back across the table. I don't know if I can do that. You already are. By being here, by holding your memories of the Pharos alongside your memories of your apartment, your university, your morning coffee, you're living proof that the human mind is flexible enough, vast enough, to contain multitudes. She stands, picks up the notebook. Keep your bronze shard, keep your star chart, and when the confusion gets too heavy, remember, you chose to keep the light burning. You chose to save lives. Everything else is just consequence. She's gone before you can respond, disappearing into the morning crowd on Hepta Stadium Road. You sit alone at the table, the coffee she ordered for you growing cold, watching the street through the window. People walk past in both directions, some wearing modern clothes, some wearing what might be ancient dress, or might be contemporary fashion influenced by ancient styles. The longer you watch, the harder it becomes to tell which is which. Your phone rings. Yara again, her voice tight with barely controlled excitement. You need to come back to the university immediately. We found something. an inscription in the basement archives. It mentions the pharaohs, the mirror, and a keeper who traced patterns to guide ships through impossible storms. It's dated to 48 BCE, and it uses your name, in an inscription from 48 BCE. "I'm coming," you say, already moving toward the door. The walk back to campus is a blur. Your mind is racing, trying to process what Thalia said, what the inscription might mean, what it says about causality and time in the strange loop you're caught in. If your name appears in an ancient inscription, does that mean you were always destined to complete the pattern? Or does the pattern's completion reach backward, rewriting history to include you? Yara meets you at the archive entrance, practically vibrating with energy. It's in the Ptolemaic collection, texts rescued from the old library before it burned. We've had them for years, but they're so damaged, so fragmentary. We've only translated about 30%. She leads you downstairs, through security doors, into the climate-controlled vault where Alexandria's rescued history lives in acid-free boxes and carefully regulated air. The inscription is on a piece of limestone, the stone itself cracked and water-stained. But the Greek letters are still legible, carved deep. Yara has already set up a translation on her laptop, the ancient and modern texts side by side. You read, "In the 3rd year of Queen Cleopatra, when the great storm came from Libya, and ships were lost in darkness, the keeper whose name is, here your name appears, spelled phonetically in Greek letters, traced the pattern of the hunter and brought light to the harbour. Many lives were saved. The mirror was damaged, but the city remembers. The keeper returned through the gate of storms to their own time, and we who witnessed give thanks to the gods who sent them." The room spins. Yara catches your arm, her grip tight. "Are you okay? You look like you're going to pass out." "When was this inscription found?" Your voice sounds far away. 1982. It's been in the collection ever since. I remembered it this morning because of the storm language, the mirror reference. I thought it might be relevant to the street names phenomenon. She's studying your face. "But you already knew about this, didn't you? Or you were there?" You can't answer. The temporal loop is complete. You travelled back to 48 BCE, kept the light burning, saved ships, completed the pattern. The ancient Alexandrians witnessed your work and recorded it in stone. That stone was discovered in 1982, stored in archives, and this morning Yara remembered it and connected it to the street names that only appeared because you completed the pattern last night. The cause is, the effect is the cause. "I need air," you managed to say. Yara follows you up the stairs, out into the courtyard. The morning has turned bright and hot, the Mediterranean sun burning away the last traces of storm, or the storm that maybe never happened, or the storm that happened 3,000 years ago, or all of these simultaneously. "Tell me," Yara says. She's not asking. "Tell me what happened." So you do. You tell her about the impossible rain, the warm hissing on hot stone, the cracked mirror and the oil fire. You tell her about Nessos and the engineer and Tribune Gaius. You tell her about the pattern, the sweeps, the way each connection renamed a piece of the harbour. You tell her about the storm eye, the vertical seam, the choice to step through or stay. When you finish, Yara is silent for a long time. Then she says, "Show me the bronze shard." You pull it from your pocket. In the sunlight it gleams, the surface still bearing traces of silver plating, the reflective coating that helped the mirror throw its beam. Yara takes it carefully, turns it over in her hands, studies the edges. "This is authentic," she says finally. "Ptolemaic-era bronze work, the alloy consistent with samples we've recovered from the lighthouse ruins. It shouldn't exist. We have no intact pieces of the mirror, only fragments too small to analyse." She hands it back to you. "But it does exist, which means your story is true, or true enough, or true in a way that our current understanding of causality can't accommodate. What do I do?" Yara sits on a bench, gestures for you to join her. "That depends on what you want. You could hide the shard, burn the star chart, pretend this never happened. Eventually your memories would fade, or you'd convince yourself it was a dream, a hallucination brought on by stress and studying too many ancient texts. She looks out at the campus, at the students moving between buildings. Or you could accept what happened, study it, learn from it, help others understand how to hold both timelines, both sets of memories, both truths." Thalia said something similar, that the real work is the integration. "Thalia?" Yara's head snaps up. You met Thalia Anagnos, the lighthouse historian from Rhodes. You know her? Everyone in lighthouse research knows of her, or knew of her. She disappeared in 1985 during a hurricane that supposedly never made landfall. Her papers were found in her office, scattered, unfinished. Some of her colleagues said she'd been obsessed with ancient navigation techniques, with the idea that lighthouses were more than just navigational aids. Yara's voice is careful now, measured. If you met her this morning, that means she succeeded. She completed her pattern, made her crossing, and has been living between times for 40 years. The implications settle over you like weight. Thalia didn't just complete a pattern. She's been doing the integration work, the teaching work, for 4 decades. And if she sought you out this morning, that means she sees something in what you did, some potential for connection, or collaboration, or continuation. There are others, you say, remembering the notebook. Keepers in other cities, other lighthouses, all of us tracing patterns, all of us stitching times together. Yara stands abruptly. Then we need to document this, properly, scientifically, before the memories fade or become unreliable. I want to record your testimony, map the correlations between the pattern you traced and the street names that appeared, analyse the inscription and the bronze shard. She stops herself, takes a breath. If you're willing. This is your experience, your story. I won't exploit it for research without your consent. You look at the bronze shard in your hand, at the way it catches the light and throws small reflections. You think about Nissos, calling angles through the storm. You think about the old man on the bench, gripping tight to keep from falling through reality. You think about all the people in Alexandria and Athens and Rome and Istanbul who woke up this morning to find their cities renamed, their memories doubled, their certainties undermined. Yes, you say. Yes, we should document it. We should understand it. And then we should figure out how to help people live with it. The next week blurs into a routine of interviews and analysis. Yara records your testimony in exhaustive detail, asking you to describe every moment from the first warm rain to the step through the seam. She brings in colleagues, carefully vetted, sworn to confidentiality, who examine the bronze shard, study the star chart photograph, compare your account to historical records of the pharaohs. The evidence accumulates. The alloy composition of the shard matches other Ptolemaic bronzes. The handwriting on your star chart photograph, when analysed by paleography experts, is consistent with 1st century BCE scribal practice. The inscription mentioning your name has been carbon dated, radiocarbon tested, verified as authentically ancient. But it's the map correlations that convince the skeptics. When Yara overlays your constellation pattern onto a map of Alexandria, the points where the beam touched correspond exactly to the locations where new street names appeared. 7 major districts, 7 stars, 7 points where the membrane between times thinned enough for names to bleed through. It's not random, Yara says on the 5th day, spreading printouts across her office floor. The pattern isn't just arbitrary, it's deliberate, structured, mathematical. The ancient builders knew exactly what they were doing. They encoded the constellation into the city's geometry, so that anyone who traced the pattern from the lighthouse would reconnect Alexandria to its founding moment, its original names, its first identity. You kneel beside her, studying the maps. But why? Why design a system that lets future keepers rewrite the present? Not rewrite, remember! Yara taps one of the printouts. Think about it. Cities change constantly. Names shift, borders move, populations turn over. Within a few generations, the original identity of a place can be completely lost. But if you build markers, anchor points, ways for future keepers to reach back and reconnect, she looks up at you. Then the city never forgets. It holds all its names, all its histories, all its versions of itself. A city that refuses to forget, you murmur, echoing your thoughts from that first night. Exactly. And if Thalia is right, if there are keepers doing this in other cities, then we're looking at a global network of memory anchors, places where the past can be accessed, integrated, kept alive in the present. Yara sits back on her heels. It's beautiful, terrifying, but beautiful. The news coverage of the street names phenomenon continues, growing stranger. Linguists note that the Greek names appearing on signs are not standard ancient Greek, but a hybrid. Classical vocabulary with modern syntax, as if the language itself is being forced to bridge the temporal gap. Psychologists report an uptick in patients describing dual memories, people convinced they remember 2 versions of the same event, 2 names for the same place, Two histories that can't both be true but somehow are. Most people adapt within days. The human mind is resilient, flexible, eager to create coherent narratives even from contradictory data. The old names fade into dreams or are reframed as what we used to call it before we learned the historical names. The new names become normal, crisis averted, or at least absorbed. But some people don't adapt. Some people come to the university, to Yara's office, seeking answers. An elderly woman who swears her grandmother told her stories about the pharaohs, about a keeper who appeared during a storm and saved ships with impossible light. A young man who found a bronze fragment on the beach and felt it burn in his hand, felt it calling to something. A child who draws pictures of lighthouses that haven't existed for millennia, tracing beam patterns that match your constellation exactly. You meet with them, carefully, one at a time. You don't tell them everything. That would be too much, too fast. But you acknowledge their memories, validate their experiences, teach them what Thalia taught you. That contradiction is not madness, but depth. That a city can hold multiple truths. That the past and present are not separate countries but neighbours, sometimes overlapping, always in conversation. It's exhausting work. By the end of each day your head throbs with temporal dissonance, your memories of the Pharos fighting with your memories of modern life, the smell of oil smoke haunting your apartment. But slowly you're learning to hold both. To walk streets that have two names and feel comfortable with the ambiguity. To look at the harbour and see both galleys and cargo, ships without needing to choose which is real. On the 8th day, Thalia comes back. You're in your apartment reviewing notes when she appears on your balcony. She doesn't knock, doesn't announce herself. She's just suddenly there, as if she stepped through a seam only she can see. "You're doing well," she says without preamble. "Better than I did my first week. I spent 3 days in bed, convinced I was losing my mind. Some days I still think I am." You gesture to a chair. "Coffee? Please." You make coffee. The ritual is grounding, normal, real, and bring 2 cups to the balcony. The harbour spreads below, afternoon sun turning the water gold. From here you can see the fort, the point where the pharaoh stood. You've been watching it every day, waiting to see if the ghost light will appear again, if the pattern will call to you, if you'll feel the urge to trace it once more. "It will," Thalia says, reading your mind or your face. The pattern doesn't release you. Once you've traced it, it becomes part of you. You'll feel it pulling, especially during storms, especially at night when Orion rises. She sips her coffee. The question is whether you'll answer. What happens if I do? If I trace the pattern again? The stitching deepens. The integration becomes more complete. More people start to remember both timelines, hold both truths. Eventually, after enough repetitions, enough keepers, enough patterns, the membrane might dissolve entirely. Past and present might merge into a single continuous moment, all times accessible from any point. She sets down her cup. That's the theory anyway. None of us have lived long enough to see it happen. And if I don't answer, if I refuse to trace it again, then the current integration stabilizes at this level. The street names become permanent but don't spread further. The dual memories fade for most people, leaving only those of us who were directly involved with the full cognitive complexity. Thalia shrugs. It's not a wrong choice. Every keeper has to decide how deep they want to go, how much integration they can live with. You watch the harbour, thinking. A container ship is making its way toward port, guided by modern navigation systems and harbour pilot boats. No lighthouse necessary, no desperate ships feeling for shore in the dark. The Pharaohs is obsolete, gone, a historical curiosity, except it's not gone. It lives in the limestone inscription, in the bronze shard in your pocket, in Nisos's handwriting on the star chart, in your muscles that still remember the weight of the crank. "I want to find the others," you say. "The keepers in Istanbul, Lisbon, Boston, all the cities in your notebook. I want to understand what they're experiencing, how they're managing the integration, what patterns they traced." Thalia smiles, and it transforms her face, makes her look younger. "I was hoping you'd say that. There's a gathering every 5 years at the International Association of Lighthouse, Authorities Conference. We meet separately, quietly, those of us who've made the crossing. The next meeting is in 3 months in Copenhagen." She pulls a card from her pocket, actual paper, cream-coloured, with an address printed in silver ink. "Come, bring your research, your questions, your bronze shard, meet the others, learn what we know. You take the card, feel its weight, its reality. 3 months. Enough time to finish documenting your experience, to help more people integrate their dual memories, to prepare questions for those who've lived between times longer than you have. Enough time to decide whether you want to trace the pattern again, deepen the stitching, pull more of the past into the present. Thank you, you say. Thalia stands, moves toward the balcony railing. For a moment you think she's going to step over, fall 3 stories to the street, but instead she just looks out at the harbour, at the fort, at the ghost of the pharaohs that only keepers can see. One more thing, she says. The boy, Nessos. He was real as you or me. But he also wasn't. The people you met in the past, they're echoes, maybe. Memories given form. They exist in that moment, in that pattern, but they don't have continuous existence the way we do. She turns to face you. Don't grieve for him. He served his purpose. He called the angles, kept you on track, pushed you through the seam. That's all he needed to be. He seemed so alive, so real. All memories are alive when you're inside them. That's the gift and the curse of the pattern. It makes history tangible, present, immediate. But it's still history, still past. She reaches out, touches your shoulder briefly. You came back. That's what matters. You made the crossing and returned, bringing the past with you instead of being consumed by it. Not every keeper manages that. She leaves the way she came, stepping toward the railing and then somehow not being there anymore, vanished into afternoon light and salt air. You sit alone on the balcony, holding the card, watching the harbour until sunset paints everything gold and purple and the first stars begin to appear. That night, for the first time since the crossing, you sleep without dreams of the pharaohs. When you wake, the temporal headache is gone, replaced by clarity. You know what you need to do. Over the next 3 months, you become the translator. The person who explains to confused citizens that yes, both names are real, both memories are valid, both truths can coexist. You work with Yara to create workshops, public lectures, accessible explanations of what happened and why. You don't mention the pattern, the lighthouse, the storm. Those details would be too much, too strange. But you talk about memory, about how cities hold multiple histories, about the human capacity to contain contradictions without breaking. Slowly, it works. The panic subsides. People stop reporting to psychologists with dual memory syndrome. The new street. Names become naturalized, folded into daily life. You overhear conversations where someone says, "Meet me at Canopic Square," and no one questions it. No one remembers that the name didn't exist 3 months ago. Alexandria has integrated its past. The coast refuses to forget. You book your flight to Copenhagen on a clear night in early autumn. Orion is rising in the east, brilliant and familiar, and as you watch through your apartment window you feel it. The pull, the pattern, the constellation calling. Not urgent, not demanding, just present. A reminder that the gate is always there, waiting, that you could trace the pattern again if you chose, deepen the stitching, bring more of the past forward. But not tonight. Tonight you have work to do in the present, questions to ask, keepers to meet, patterns to understand. The bronze shard stays in your pocket, warm and real. The star chart stays in your drawer, preserved between sheets of acid-free paper. And the memory of Nessos calling angles through the storm stays in your mind, neither forgotten nor pursued, held in the space between was and is where all keepers learn to live. Below your window, the harbour glitters with reflected light. No lighthouse sweeps its beam across the water. The Pharos is gone, has been gone for 1,500 years, will always be gone. Except it's not. It's there, in the memorial plaque on the fort, in the tourist guidebooks, in Yara's research files and the limestone inscription and the bronze shard you carry, in the renamed streets and the dual memories and the way Alexandria now holds both its ancient and modern identities without choosing between them. The coast refuses to forget, and so do you. The next story is about to begin. Please relax and enjoy.